Up to you. It's up to all of us. I'm here now. This moment, I got to take something in my avodas Hashem to take back to England. That's step aside to it. You have to do something yourself. The Rebbe was told me off really, really heavy. Really heavy. And he said, whatever it was, never said, I can give you questions, but I can't do what he says. When I try to go with that, if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. So now, I'll tell you the real story. Want to hear the real story? Mm-hmm. I want to read the question. You know why? Because I'm hard of hearing. If you ask the questions, you can ask. Don't worry, a little left in here. I'm like, where am I hearing it? But when there's questions, it's interactive. It's called in English. It means that we're all stakeholders. It's not somebody giving you a bracha. No, my little about when you were home. Will come. There was huge spot, tough thing you said. A lot of things that you 4 o'clock in the morning. Next to the last. The last one was over one Shashkanaz. Anyway, so I want to tell you something here that I heard from Litvish but beheged. I want to say what I heard from my mental Kfar. The mental Futafas, the Keslו, the Mashpia, legendary Mashpia in Kfar, and then he passed away. The mental Futafas was living in London, running a business that set up for him. Desk plastics, a small little business, a shop, and being mashpia on thousands of people. And then the Rebbe said, I want you to consider becoming the mashpia in Kfar Chabad, and the Seder is, go to Kfar Chabad and spend a couple of weeks there and see if you like it. Go on a trial like it. And if you like it, go back to London and spend the next year winding up your business. And then go to Baba. This is what happened. I heard this from a Mendel. What happened was, Rahman al-Islam is what they needed that. What I mentioned that summer, he was the Kodesh of Keslo. There was a car accident, and his only daughter was killed. And left over 11 kids. The youngest of whom was about 6 months old. The oldest was Yossi Librav, he was already in Yeshiva. And I was in South Africa. I came back on Friday. It was the last day of Yeshiva. My wife said, I came in at 7 o'clock in the morning. She said, terrible news, but you got to go. It's the only chance to be Menachem. And when the Mendel told me this story, because I was in Kfar Chabad that summer on the way to South Africa. At that Fabrengen. That first Fabrengen that he Fabrengen. And when Mendel laughed, he said, the Rebbe told me, wind up your business so that year. He said, my business I can wind up in a week. With a month. He thought on the roof that he needed that to wind up to make arrangements for 11 kids. That really took a lot of effort. Anyway, at that Fabrengen in Kfar Chabad, I think it was Shabbos Nachmu, of Tafshin Lamed Aleph. The Mendel spoke about what a loyal son is to a parent. A good son is not a son who does what his father tells him to do. That's not a good son. That you can take for granted. A good son is someone who anticipates what his father wants. And he does it even if his father doesn't tell him to do it. And he said a chosid is someone who realizes what the Rebbe wants. He doesn't have to tell it to him direct. He knows what the Rebbe wants from him. And he does it. That's the word. And to me it reminded a story which is in the Sichos of the Finnick Rebbe, but I heard it from the Rebbe himself in the early Chofs in Fabregin. The Rebbe Rashab used to learn B'chavrusa with Rabbi Yaakov Meir Bespalov, the Poltava Rav. You ever hear of Poltava? You know the Poltava Nigid?
Yeah.
You know it? You should. So this is the Poltava Rav. And he used to learn with the Rebbe Mishmach Sefer. And they would have discussions also while they were sitting together. And they were discussing what is a chosid. And he said, chosid is makusha to the Rebbe. And so the Rebbe Mishmach Sefer said, that's not a chosid. That's a Shulchan Aruch. If a Rebbe tells you, your rabbi tells you to do something, like Sosha, it's a din in the Chumash. If Chochem, your rabbi tells you to do something, it's a mitzvah min HaTorah to do it. He says, so what's a chosid? A chosid is mechusha to the pu'ulas of the Rebbe. To the Rebbe's activities, even though the Rebbe did not tell him to do it. That's what you call a relationship. That's what you call love. And I'll tell you now about a conversation. It's illuminated from Chassidus. I was sitting Shiva, the brother, and I got close, flat with a nephew of mine. I sat next to him the whole week. And I said, anytime you want, here's my number, call me up. To call me up is Elul, Tovshin, Pei Al, Pei Bey. A year ago. And he calls me up, and he says, I have a question. Here's the question. He was preparing for davening, like a good Jew, looking at the machzor, you're kibbutz davening, and he saw there, in Ne'ilah, a reference to a Gemara in Eidavin. The Gemara says that there was a heavy machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. What was the machlokes about? Noyach loy la'odam shenivra, or noyach loy la'odam shaloi nivra. Would it be better for a person to be born, or would it be better for a person not to be born? It's a Gemara. And the interesting thing is, it's the only one I know, Shammai and Beis Hillel, it doesn't say which one said which view. It just says that they were talking about it. One said this and one said that. And they argued it for 2.5 years. And at the end, Nibnu V'Gablu, they reached the conclusion, Noach le'la Adam shaloi nivra. Better he was not born. Now you're born, give yourself over, immerse yourself in talking with him. Like what it sounds like, make the best of it. So I asked him, what's your question on that Gemara? So he tells me, so what is the question? So give it to me. He says, what took them 2.5 years? That's the only question. Why couldn't they decide that in 2.5 minutes? Work out what your view is. 2.5 hours. In Big Buddha, it's 2.5 days. 2.5 years. What's going to take you 2.5 years? Question. So, I told him, how much time do you have right now? He said he's driving from work from Flatbush to New Jersey. He's in the car. He's alone. It's an hour's drive. Okay. So I explained to him a little bit, which I'll explain to you in a minute, in human terms, about Rotzu V'Shul. What it means to love somebody. What it means to have a relationship. What does it mean? How do you gauge? How do you measure that you really are a friend? You have a friendship. How can you measure? How can you prove? How can you show what your friendship is? How can you know? How can you tell? What happened? What made? So I said, first of all, before you answer a question about is it good to be created or not, I have two bigger questions on the Gemara. He says, what's that? I said, number one, how can you have a suffix? If it's good or bad, there's a sefer which is called Chamisha Chumshei Torah. And the first Chumash is Bereshis, and the first second is Bereshis, and the first Pedic of Bereshis, it says, Vayad Elokim, it's called Asher Asor, V'hinei.
Tov Miyod.
Hard to hear it. Vayad Elokim, it's called Asher Asor, V'hinei. Tov Miyod. So how do you have a question if it's Tov or not to be born? The English just said it's good. 2.5 years, you got to argue that. Second of all, in the same seven Bereshis, the first mitzvah of the Torah is Pru Revu. Would Hashem give you a commandment to do something which is not good? No. To bring children onto the world? And the answer is, it doesn't say, Toiv lo yilod. The Alter Rebbe writes with the Torah Pashas Ve'eh. It's in the Kitzurim there. I didn't know it was Shas Ma'aser, I didn't remember it, but I saw it. From a Ha'orah in a project L'Kutei Sichos, I looked up that Maimah, and the Alter Rebbe says, Chas v'sholem, to say Toiv lo or lo Toiv lo. It says Noyach lo. Noyach means, you know what Noyach means? What does Noyach mean? Easy. Comfortable. Yeah? Is it comfortable to be born? Is it easy to live a life on this world? That was the question. The other was talking about the neshama comes from Atzilus down to Bria. The Nivra means Olam HaBria. And he says it's not Noyach, but Chas V'Sholem says it's not Noyach. Look in the Pashas Ve'eh. Is it easy or not? I have another brother, who was 55 years ago. Good, I need it for you hear me? Yeah. You heard me before too. But now, my voice will last maybe an extra half hour. I know I'm going to do Shabbos. Anyway, so here you go. Here goes. My brother's visiting me. He said, like, you know, the David young, he goes Staten Island, 40 years old. He never, ever misses a minyan 3 times a day. They ever told me in Yeshivas later, years after, that to make sure he learns Chassidus, which we do now on Zoom. What's that? A popular kind of a guy. He came to visit England. He was just married. Now he's an elder. He came there, and I asked him one question. I'm an older brother asking my kid brother, he's now 79 years old. I asked him one question. I said, tell me, do you have any friends? And he was a very popular person. And he says, I have plenty of friends. But if your question is that if I have a crisis at 3 o'clock in the morning, physical, mental, whatever, when I call somebody up, one, maybe two, maximum three. And I reminded him a few weeks ago of this conversation. All I remember from the whole week he spent in English is that sentence. Because I thought that that is a fantastic description of what a friend is. If you love somebody, what makes you love them? You have a relationship with someone. What makes you have a relationship with them? What is it? It makes you feel good. You want to write a poem about it. You want to draw a picture. You want to sit and talk with them the whole day and the whole night. Yeah. That's how you describe it. That's self-love. Of course it's a part of it. You enjoy that part of it. And it might be 90% of the time. If there's a 10%, you have something easy. And it's not loyal. It's getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Loyal is 8 hours uninterrupted sleep. No one bothers me. That's called loyal. That's an easy life. But what happens if somebody really needs you 3 in the morning, and it's been a tough day, and the night before you went to sleep very late, and you had a power cut, and you had and this was not working, and tomorrow is a precious day, and 3 o'clock in the morning, the person needs you. What would you do? So if you would do what the person wants you to do, then you're a friend. You're doing what's right instead of what's comfortable. Not loyal. In my opinion, there's a third level. One level is sleeping 8 hours. Second level is having a sense of responsibility and duty. I've got to do it. I'm a man, and it's not comfortable, but I'm going to do it. And the third level is I'm the simple that I was able to help the person who needed it. And all of that applies in friendships, in being a good child, a good child to parents, being a good parent to children, and in avodas Hashem, and in being a chosek. Not that the Rebbe said, what does the Rebbe really want? That's not necessarily loyal. Not easy. Something which you do it because you're supposed to do it. That's a level. That's a very significant level of chassidus, is to do something because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. That's what the Rebbe wants. But there's even a deeper level that you don't just have Kabbalah Sorah. It's Loyro Simcha Miyobo. It's the biggest Simcha possible. But you're doing something that it's not that your body or your mind or your personality would necessarily want to do. That's what it means, Loyro. And for that, it can take 2.5 years. I asked the guy, I told him, I said, by the way, what are you in the car for an hour? He said, well, to work. I said, do you work on Sundays? He said, no. I work for you? Yes. Sunday? No. I said, do you take the trip an hour each way on Sunday? He said, what, are you kidding me? I don't work. I don't, of course not. He said, so when are you taking that trip? Because you're sitting with your wife and with your kids the whole day, every day. You're doing it, it's not loyal. It's not something you do on your day off. But you're doing it because of a relationship. A relationship is what you do, which is not, remember what the Bible is to say, the way to overcome the Yetzer Hara is mitfinif minut. You tell the Yetzer Hara, it says, I want you to think such and such, or to say such and such, or to do such and such, whatever it is, tell him wait 5 minutes. And keep on pushing him off for 5 minutes. When you push off something which you would maybe want to do, but there's a relationship which is more significant, which is more meaningful to you than just feeling comfortable, that's where the sign is of a chassid, of a child, of a friend, and of a yid. Anyway, I'm going to the questions now. Okay, here we go. You have any other questions? The message is mine, just let me know. A good question. They're completely different. They're different from each other. The first one is, what role should Yiddish be playing in Lubavitch today? Yiddish language. What role should Yiddish, speaking Yiddish, what role should it play? Now, like most questions, it have to do with chinuch, and which have to do with today versus Amol. This question is not simple, or the answer is not simple. It has to do with oidus and kelim. The or is always, Torah does not change. The kelim is the whole kloli achinuch v'hachava. The Rebbe, I never did the arithmetic, but it has 17 prokim, so probably about 12, 13, maybe 14 talks about considering the kelim, even though the or doesn't use that language. So the question is, what role, what place does Yiddish have? So first I'm going to tell you something which the Rebbe told us, my wife and myself, in Yechidus, on Chav Daled of Toshin Chav Hey. The night before we left, the next night, to England for the Yechidus, for the Shlichus, 58 years ago. Whenever I went into Yechidus with my wife, well, she was my kala also, altogether, before we went on Shlichus, must have been 5, 6. I can work out how many there were exactly, but a few Yechidus. And the Rebbe used to speak English, including to me, when my wife was there. And one time, the Rebbe said we should write in Hatzois, in a letter. We both wrote a letter together. And my wife wrote in English, and I wrote in Hebrew. And when we gave the Rebbe the tzedel, the Rebbe immediately translated a kitzur of what the Hebrew said. We were 2 years in Koilin. Tavshin Chav Dalet and Tavshin Chav Hey. This was the end of Chav Hey. Chav Dalet of Tavshin Chav Hey. We walked in and the Rebbe asked my wife, do you speak Yiddish yet? And she said she understands a lot better, but doesn't speak it so well. So the Rebbe said it's a shame, after 2 years in Brooklyn, that they don't speak Yiddish. And then the Rebbe said, we were talking about what to do in English, certain of the Shlichus. So the Rebbe said to her in English, I'm going to talk to your husband in Yiddish, and in case there's something you don't understand from what I'm saying, you can interrupt. That's what the Rebbe said. I'm not saying that there's a big milah in Yiddish. There's also a story of the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushkin, when Dr. Feldman's daughter came with her chosen, who was Shemter, and to get a bracha from the Rebbetzin. This was very shortly, a couple of weeks before Chafei Shvat. And the Rebbetzin Chayamushka asked, are you an Einikul of Metzion Shemter? And he said, yes. So she said, that's really good, because now you'll speak Yiddish with your, I know you'll speak Yiddish with your children. And it's interesting, they got married, and they didn't have children. Well, by 2 years, and 4 years, and 5 years, and 10 years, and 15 years. But they always had 100% emunah and bitachon. So that was said you can speak Yiddish with your children. Not just one son, his children. And the end is they had a son and a daughter. after about 18 years. Children were born in the summer. And obviously it's supposed to be. Now, having said that, the question is, what role the Rebbe told Rabbi Sofra in England when it came to the curriculum? He said Yiddishkeit is more important than Yiddish. In other words, the Torah. Learning if parents can speak with the children in Yiddish, it's an extremely useful thing. It's very beneficial. It's the language that Rabbi saying in this Yehudi spoke. The language you can hear that Rebbe Sichas has a lot of advantages. But the Teuching of Yiddishkeit is priority. And it's the letter from the Rebbe in Chabad where they spoke it written in the school. Instead of, and they wanted the teachers to speak Yiddish, the Rebbe said they should learn Yiddish at home, and during playtime, the teacher, when he speaks to the children in recess, should speak in Yiddish. But when it comes to learning, it really depends. There's a tremendous milah of knowing Yiddish. But Chassidus, especially, Chabad Chassidus, is the Teuching is more important than the language. Not that the language is not important, and very, very important. But the Teuching in the educational system is what takes priority. What I did when I taught the boys, I taught Chavav, Chav Zayin, Chav Ches, Chav Tes. I taught in the boys' high school. And Lamed Aleph, I taught in the boys' the oldest class. The boys were 12, 13 years old. And they didn't know Yiddish. I don't know if any of them do Yiddish, but I used to teach them Yiddish songs. We couldn't. So we would do a nigga, and meanwhile I would teach them how to write Yiddish as well, like these kind of nigunim I taught. So they learned Yiddish, they learned the niggin, and they learned how to write Yiddish as well. It's also, it has the different rules of spelling and writing. It's a fantastic thing to know. Somebody once came by the Rebbe by dollars, and the Rebbe spoke to him in Russian. He was from Russia. And he said, the Rebbe, he said in Yiddish to the Rebbe, I'm trying to forget that language. So the Rebbe said, the Rebbe said, I know a lot of languages, but I wish I knew more. When you wilt vergessen a Sprach, you want to forget a language? Every language you know is beneficial. There's no such thing as a boring language, a bad language. A language helps you to think. It helps you to understand everything that you learn. Especially if it's the Yiddish language, that language has in it Jewish history. If you learn how to look at the Yiddish word, and somebody who knows how to study it will know that it contains the whole history, where the Jews were, and what they did in all those places. I'll give you an example. In Yiddish, there's a word which you all know probably. It's I. You're going to tell me this. So there was a rabbi called Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. And I was very, very close with him. I had a Shia in his room. That was the first one that I dealt with in Tavshach of Ches. So over the years, we spent a lot of good, solid years together. So one time he was in my house. And he's brilliant, and knew philosophy, English. I said, translate for me the word I into English. And he did, but it was about 10 words. It was, philosophical words, I don't remember what they were. What it would mean in turn. So I said to him, that is a Yiddish word. He said, how do you know? I said, because it's Rosh Tevis, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Just a summer word. And we all use it all the time. You're going to tell me this. Then I'll tell you that. So Yiddish is a fantastic language to know. But in learning, the Rebbe said, and he said to Kfar Chabad, of course you should know Yiddish, but your parents should teach them, or someone else. Then find it a different way. What? What?
I told the Suffolk, until Suffolk, they should play ball in Yiddish.
Play ball. Great time. Jesus.
Suffolk also.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Also, they was English. I don't know if they play ball. No, but many of the teachers,
that's like my gift.
they said things in Yiddish, and some of them, the English is not, like Levi Paris, over Schultz. Up with older boys. Well, it's understand. If there's a desire, picking up a language is not as hard as it looks. It needs motivation. But anyway, so the question was, what role should it be playing? It should be playing a central role, but there are other it's not the first priority. Next question. If you come up with any other questions, you can write it anonymous like this. What should I do if I do not have a koch in Chassidus? And I do not appreciate that the Rebbe is my Rebbe.
Oh.
Now that is a great question. You know why it's a great question? Why is it a great question? Because a lot of people have that question and they don't have the courage to ask it. And the only way you can answer it is by asking.
Don't give it away.
So let's take the two parts of the question. Part number one is, what should I do if I do not have a prophet to see this? Believe it or not, there's a similar thing is in the English Kodesh of the Rebbe. To a brother. And he's not saying I don't have a cup, I know, he's saying how should I divide the time, and I want this, that. And the Rebbe said, the Seder Yeshiva is hated. Unless you arrange with the Mashpia. With the Mashpia. But there's a tremendous amount of free time. And you don't have to do it. During the time that you have to do Chassidus, you don't have a koch in Chassidus, you can do it without a koch, A. B, speak it through with the Mashpia. And look for the areas in Chassidus which fit in with your koch. Because there's everything in Chassidus. It could be that the part that you're learning is either difficult or boring, or you don't see it's relevant at this moment in your life. Whatever it is, I promise you, I'm not talking here in Ruchnius, not everyone understands. But in intellectual development and cultivating of the thinking processes, it's always valuable. But it's not always, it says, people wrote to the Rebbe, get bored. He said, change pace in the middle, change to a different subject, or to a different aspect, whatever it is, change it around. So you look for a way, and yeah. And the other thing is, which is the Nekuda helping another Yid to do a mitzvah. And sometimes it's helping, somebody asked me once in Korea, in a favofana place. And they were asking about their own child. I don't want to go into the details, it's a common topic. But one of the things I said is, get for your child. The question was, is it possible for such a child to stay at home at the age of 15? Or would it be better than to go away? So I don't know the answer. I don't know. It's a person I never saw. From Adam. I knew the name. I didn't know the person. I said, I cannot tell you, but I can tell you what I do know a lot about is which issues to factor in, what to consider when you're making the decision. Starting with the fact that it's very healthy for a teenage child to be with their parents, unless there's an issue, maybe there's no way they can learn, or there's whatever it is. There's plenty of situations where it's best not to. But one of the things I said is, if you arrange with your child to learn with someone else and pay them, the 15-year-old, let them learn with a 10 or a 9 or 8-year-old on when they have no school or the evenings as a paid job, and that will help them, motivate them. Baruch Hashem, this was maybe 15, 20 years ago. The child is a parent. I met the child in Eretz Yisrael, when they were already like 19, 20 years old.
Just could you clarify?
So by learning to see this with somebody else, yeah, but I'm out of here. You come around here and tell me. So by learning, to make a little chavrusa in the part of Chassidus that you do enjoy. Take the zichroinus of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which the Rebbe said, that it contains the essence of Chassidus in it. Those stories. Learn things which are more accessible to your level of desire. And you'll get something out of it. I promise you. Oh, one minute, the second part. About the Rebbe. Yeah. Just let me break here for a second. Excellent question. We'll get to all of it. Now, here was the second part of the question was, what should I do if I do not appreciate that the Rebbe is my Rebbe? Now, one of my Talmidim, I'm in a school, we finished it with the end of the school year, it was Chof Chesiva. I said, look, we finished a week early, so I gave him $100, gave some money to the kids. I said, buy grape juice and food, and we have a Fabrani next week. And I said, ask any question you want. So one of the kids asked the question, why do I need a Rebbe? So I said to this person, number one, I congratulate you that you have the courage, you act in a respectful way, an important question. I said, it's a question which is good to know what it's about. I said, in order to answer it, I need about at least 10, 15 minutes. And listen here, I'm going to tell you a story. I heard the story from Rabbi Sudak, Olav Shalom, our head shliach. It happened before I came to England 58 years ago. This happened about 60 years ago. There was a woman in Stamford Hill in London, a very religious neighborhood, a frum woman, that she had a very, very serious, threatening illness. And the doctor said, you have just so many weeks or so many months to live. Rabbi Sudak had just recently arrived in England, and he said, I can tell you, write to the Rebbe. And she wrote, and the Rebbe said, maybe he said, check, I don't know what the Rebbe said. He certainly gave a bracha, he certainly replied, and B'nes Gomer, this woman recovered. And Hakoil Rohu, B'nes Gomer. Chabad is not really that low. There were plenty of good Hasidim, including Rabbi Yaakov. But it wasn't like a moisin. Now this woman had a rabbi in the Kehillah, was a choshev enough, and he loved Lubavitch, and he did a lot of good things with Lubavitch, but he had a kasha on the whole story. He was like from a Yakisha background, not going around asking you to bathe. He says, Chassidus, not something I was brought up with. But I know there's a Rashi in Chumash, it's Parshas Vayesh, that Yishmael was sick, and he was with his mother Hagar, and they davened, and it says in the Chumash, Vayishma Elokim El Koil Hanahat Ba'asher Ushav, and God listened to the tefillah of the boy, of Yishmael. Says Rashi, Vikan, Sheyofer, something like these words, Yofer Tefillosai, Shalachayla, Vitfilas Achayim Olo. Better, stronger, more effective is the tefillah of the one who is sick, the one who needs the Yeshua, is more potent, is more effective than anybody else, than somebody else to daven for them. So this rabbi said, this whole meaning of somebody gets sick and you write to the Rebbe to daven, because it sounds inconsistent with that Rashi. And somehow that question reached the Rebbe himself. Akav Rabbi Sulik put it in a duch. He wrote every single week. Before Gimel Tammuz, after Gimel Tammuz, he wrote the Rebbe every week.
What is?
He closed himself in his office and he typed a duch every week. I spoke once this anyway. So here's the Rebbe's answer, the way I paraphrase it. The Rebbe said, going and asking a rabbi to daven for you is not a chiddush of Chabad. You say, this is a new thing in town. The Babbage came to town, which is 200 years old. It's not even a chiddush just of Chassidus, 250 years. It's in Nigla, it's in Gemara. The one you guys are learning, it's in Baba Basra, in Bavli. Not in the first, not in the first page. But it's in Baba Basra. It says if yesh choila, if there's a sick person in the house, yetza, yelech, etzel, chacham. Chacham in the Gemara means chacham. Some people say in the Haggadah, chacham Rosh is a contrast. Tzaddik and Rosh. He's go to a tzaddik. The Gemara says, go to a tzaddik. So the rabbi has no place, and no right to ask from the Hanhog of Chassidus of fulfilling Yetzel Etzel HaChacham. But the Rebbe said there is a kasha. The Stira, the Gemara says, go to the Chacham, and Rashi says the tefillah of the person themselves is better than the tefillah of somebody else for them. And the Rebbe said the answer is that a Rebbe is not somebody else. The Rebbe is on a Neshama Klolis. The Rebbe, the word the Rebbe is on Rashi Tevis. A bit louder. Rosh, B'nai. That's right. Excellent. I hired this guy. Rosh, B'nai, you know what a Rosh is? You know what the function of a head is? Did you ever hear of a thing called the central nervous system? We know it, we call it the brain. The brain is a system which controls the whole body. It doesn't do things for you. If you want to go someplace, you got to get up on your feet and you got to walk. That's how you go somewhere. If you want to give tzedakah, you got to put your hand in your pocket and pull out a coin or a bill and give it. The Rebbe can't do you avoid the figure. Mitzvah Shebagufa, you got to put on film on your own body. On the other hand, a person might be very strong and athletic and fit and have powerful legs, for example, And Rahman al-Islam is what I need gedacht. He has a stroke in the head. There's a bleeding in the head. And he can't walk. That's a roish. A roish is something which connects the whole body. And the whole of Klal Yisrael is a body, one configuration. And there's the roish, there's the lay, there's the yadayim, there's the topone, the glayim. You learned about it in Tanya. There's everything. And the Rebbe is the central power of it. That's what it's a Rebbe. Well, in a different kind of language, the neshama is called by 5 names. Yes, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. Thank you very much. And so the Siddur says it's not just 5 names, it's 5 Madreis, and the yechida is the connection with it. So most people, not most people, everybody, is operating on a fraction of our capacity. You do all the mitzvahs, all the right things. It's not, you have a certain level. There's a level called Yechida. It's not kavos, it's eichos. It changes everything in a person's life. So I said to this student, I said, you know something? You can say, why do I need a Rebbe? There are thousands and thousands of Yidden, Yereim, Shleilim, who claim that they don't have a Rebbe and they don't need a Rebbe. And they're from a Yidden. But I promise you that they didn't hit the Yidden. Or if they did, it wasn't on the level that they could get with a connection to the Rosh B'nai Yisrael. So when you say, how I did not appreciate the Rebbe is my Rebbe, don't analyze so much. Try to work on having a connection to the Rebbe. A Bacha once came to me many years, maybe 30, 40 years ago. It was in New York. And he said, I feel I'm slipping. And I'm telling you, he wasn't slipping. He slipped. He was waking. And he says, tell me something I can do. I said, you want to connect to the Rebbe. The Rebbe told me in Yechidus, the Ikki his Kashus is from Torah. You know what I mean. But this guy was not holding anywhere near that. In my perhaps unfair eyes. And I said to him, I bought him a present, the big brown English Hayogi. I said, I ask you one thing, every day, give 1 minute, 2 minutes to the Rebbe and read something to think about something the Rebbe said to that day. That's all. So each person, you want to know how to develop that feeling. Why the feeling is good? It's because it will bring out your innermost self. It's not going to be a chassid of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is going to be very lucky to have another chassid. I'm sure the Rebbe would be delighted. The Rebbe would love to have another chassid. And it was once a Jew who was not even Orthodox. And he told the Rebbe, I feel very attracted, but I don't see myself ready to become a chassid. How can I be a chassid of yours if I'm not really 100% there? And the Rebbe said to him, any Jew who looks in the mirror and says, tomorrow should be better than today, I'm proud to call him my chassid. It's not where you are. In fact, you're looking for it. Look for it. Find a connection, learning, minimum hayom yom. Each person can find their way. That's what I suggested to this guy who's today somehow it's Asia, I don't know place. Number 2, help another Yid. Be mekayem another Yid. because the Rebbe considers that a personal favor. There's a lot of stories where the Rebbe told someone, do me a personal favor. What is it? The Rebbe told me to be Makar of someone. And the third thing is to get yourself a mashpia. What does a person have to be in order to be my mashpia? And through a mashpia, you'll have a connection to the devil. How does it work? I don't know. But it works, I promise. Number one, it should be someone you look up to, you respect. In a spiritual way. It doesn't have to be perfect. But someone that you look up to, not just stop yourself. Number two, someone you can trust to be 100% confidential. So I once told this to a student, and they said, how do I know that? I said, take them on for small things. And as time goes by, you'll see you can trust them. And number three, they should be non-judgmental. You tell them your problem, they don't think any lower. They understand that every person, especially a young person, especially a developing person, has ups and downs. That is life. It's a big brother from the age. Because then, whatever you achieve, you're achieving. It's yours. It's in hand. It's solid. It's not something that was transcended. But the price you have to pay is that there's downs as well as ups. Not always going so easy. Not always going so good. You're not always in the mood. It's not always be simple. You have someone who you can trust, they're not going to teach his mental, it's the best thing in the world. Next question. What?
Kids should be at home before they go to another school. What age were you thinking?
This is the best question in the world. You know why? Because it's the answer to everything that I'm going to tell you. I asked the Rebbe a similar question. His question was, I say that it's best for a child to be with the parent. He said, at what age should they leave home? And the answer is that there's not one answer. I asked the Rebbe once, when I took over as a principal of a school, and after I was there for a year and a half, I was in New York, and I wrote a sticker long, with 3-4 page letter to the Rebbe with two main questions. I don't know how to do my job. And the two things, one was about stuff they're learning in the secular, Shakespeare, how should be the whole lot of stuff on it. And the second thing was, I had to advise people when they're 16, 17 years old, not all Lubavitch families, and I'm the Geber, I'd like them to stay in my school, maybe go somewhere else to the school of college. I wrote all these different sides to it. And the Rebbe told me it depends on the person. That's the case. The Rebbe once told Rabbi Suffering that ideally a girl, a daughter, should be with her mother till the chuppah. But that's not the world we're into. So they go to seminary. But you have to understand what's right and what's wrong, what's better and what's worse. It depends on the home. I know people where the home life, for certain reasons, was not healthy for a growing person. I know somebody, and I know I know from a friend. Now he's a Zayda, but he told me that the Rebbe told him in Yechidus to advise another boy to do a whole roundabout thing to make that person stay not at home, because that was good for him. So for that you have to work out with a mashpia, with a mechanic, what's right for each kid. And the important thing is, very often parents or buffers themselves, they think about there's a certain problem in a certain place or with a certain person. and they want to solve it, and they have a solution, and the solution works. But the only thing is, they solved one problem, but they created 3 problems, or 2 problems, or even one, but it's a bigger one, a harder one. So then you need to know in each situation that anyone's in chinuch is doing that 24/7. That's when you say hello, good morning, I gotta know every single day I'm walking. And I try to smile, this and that one, and I gotta know exactly when and who and what. Derech agav to meet in the hall and say a word, not. It depends on the person. But the general point is that the bonding of a parent to a child is a very healthy connection. That's the point. How that applies, what they never told me then, by the way, was that I should speak to all the sins up to the neck of the side, but speak to Rabbi Chavik. I was in New York. Anyway, that's a whole other thing in itself. That letter. Pleasure. Asach Nachat. In all directions. The Rebbe once said to the Yechidus of mine, with the words, I was a buffer, Mונטריאול. And the Elterns will have from dir Nachas, your parents should have Nachas from you, and du von sie, and you should have from them Nachas. Your parents, nobody loves you like your parents do, but sometimes it's pretty heavy, or intrusive, or judgmental. No, you with them alone. I need it. It's a healthy relationship. Anyway, am I able to smoke weed if I'm depressed?
Who would have wrote
Believe it or not, there's an answer from the Rebbe, an English letter. You should, whoever it is wants to come out and tell me who he is, and send me your thing. I'll send you I have an English letter from the Rebbe to somebody at the Rebbe in a serious way about getting a spiritual high with LSD, with some kind of artificial stimulant, and the Rebbe explains that that's not real Avodas Hashem. You know what it says in the Zohar? Chava did an Aveda with Odom, and they ate from the Eitz Hadas. What was the Aveda? It says the Eitz Hadas was grapes. It was wine. And it became self-conscious. It's in the mind of Basi Lugani that self-consciousness. There's a kasha. They did an Aveda, and as a result, they became very knowledgeable. The point is, they got a reward for doing Aveda. They got knowledge. So Siddur and his Kabbalah explains that the knowledge they had before that was a higher level of knowledge. It was the knowledge of Elokus. Their body was just an instrument to do Hashem's will, whatever the mitzvah was. Once they became self-conscious, they became ashamed when they weren't dressed. Because there was the Yetzer Hara already mixed in everything. And that was the Chet Eitz Hadas, was Hegesh Atzma. So the Zohar says that Noach, why did he go and plant a vineyard? When he came out, he said there was an Aveda, and there was a world, and it got destroyed, and we got to build it up, and we have to do Avodas Hashem b'simcha, and the way to do it is to take weed. He didn't take weed. He didn't know about weed, so he took what? L'chaim. He took alcohol. But that was not real, because that was an artificial thing. It's outside. That's not called becoming a better person. It's not better for yourself even. It's a high, but it's nothing. It's empty. It's zero. Not because it's zero 20 years later, bad, which it is. It's zero because that moment itself was not a moment. Who is the real one? The Zohar says Soda. Sarah went through difficult moments, challenging moments, doubting moments. She asked questions, she had all these problems. It's a Sarah, Nachas, Sarah Saltis. She went down and she went up from her side. That's what it means, working with yourself. So you're not in the mood, so maybe that day you leave it off, just learn the gifts or whatever. But an artificial stimulant is not changed, and it makes it work for the person.
Could you
I got a couple of.
Could you explain the difference between taking a l'chaim and leave or getting a high?
No difference.
Taking a l'chaim is taken to the extent that it becomes addictive. It's just as bad.
No, but
It's not worse.
you're saying just to take
What?
it. You're saying when you take a l'chaim, it's just
Taking just one puff of weed.
They never said, a young lady Xavier, why did if it's a bad thing, and you only can take 3 or 4, whatever it is, why take it all? Because sometimes it can help you not to be inhibited when you need that.
so that.
One second. When you start saying, I need mustard, this color, and this flavor, and this that, it's not a step in the best direction. And it's a tiger. It's drinking Coke.
But when the Rebbe says full. No. So
Those advice of the Gellis.
good. I'm saying.
That's not just yellow. You don't know, there's this kind, single malt, this one, that one, 50 years, 20 years. Blue label, gold label. When you were a little boy, you went to the store to buy breakfast, you had 12 plates of rice with it. Today it's about 75 minutes. With everything. Look, every person, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You know what? You follow the guidance of your Mashkiach. I tell you one thing, once it becomes something that you're dependent on, it's not healthy, not for Gashmi, it's not for the it's not good. Not good. Still, give a little bit of to take away the inhibition. To someone who needs that. It's using it as an escape. It's not living. It's not much with Gashmi. It's a real good life.
I meant out of
When you're sleeping, you know what happened? Rabbi Greenglass in Montreal, he used to tell a story about Napoleon. If you want to know about Napoleon's life, you come to Hasidic Yeshiva, you know about Napoleon. So one of the stories was that Napoleon used to sleep 3 or 4 hours a night. And his mother came to him, and she said, I heard this story from both people, more than once. His mother came to him and she said, Mr. Chakesa, you're an emperor. You can sleep as much as you want. Why do you sleep only 3-4 hours a night? So he said to her, when I'm sleeping, I'm not a Kesef. An escape, that's not life. I'm facing a problem, it's difficult. I'm forcing a smile because I know we'll be talking, it's going to work out because Hashem makes everything work out in the end. That's living, even though it's not comfortable. It's like lo yachlo. It's not a comfortable life, always. But it's a pleasure, it's deep, it's real. It's real. You want to live. All these things are not life. Not because they're bad investment for your future, which it is, a bad investment for your future. But it's right in the here and now. It's nothing. I was on Chaim. The Rebbe said if one tipa is too much for a bacha, if a lizik with one tipa, don't take that also too much. Rebbe said that in the Sikha, I heard it. It depends. You want to stay in control, that's the thing. Not like Chava, not like Noach, like Sodom. Deal with your issues. Not easy. Your friends, yourself. It's all a different thing. Next question. In a city that is not necessarily the most exciting. Is that in Montreal? I don't know.
Yeah, Montreal.
I thought it was London. How do you keep yourself motivated and happy? You know what happened? We out of a break on a Shabbos in London, and I was telling a story that happened here. Whatever. I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you afterwards. That story reminded me of one about the BBC. And the guy starts screaming. He says, Shmuel walks across the street and something happened to him. Why does nothing happen to me? And I happened to hear him, because he said it to me. I said, I promise you, when you walk the street, there's 1,000 things happening. Just have a bigger mouth than you. You gotta, you look there, you'll see a lot of exciting stuff happening. When I was in Montreal, I wasn't bored. I was enslaved. I was enslaved. I never, in my religious life, a Friday night in the middle of the winter, 8:30, you start chazing a maimah, and then looking for a chazan, and eating in the winter, 10 o'clock at night, 9:30 at night, eating through the Shabbos. It was an adjustment. But you know something? When I got married, I made a deal with my wife. We were in Crown Heights. You work hard the whole week, especially Friday. We take a nap. And I used to stay in 770 and come home late, but I missed it. The thing which was most difficult for me, I found to be the most pleasant. That Shabbos didn't just suddenly come on. You walked into it. Today it was a different way. Today, I turn off my device. Turn off my phone. At least, minimum, of an hour before Shabbos. And I don't turn it on, but a minimum of 1 hour, usually 2-3 hours after Shabbos, especially in the winter. And I feel I'm alive. I'm not, my life is not dictated. It's not by something outside of me. So I could say, a life without a device, before mobile phones, you had students coming to Pegishas. How could you tolerate, we had a Pegish in England, when Shabbos ends about 11 o'clock at night in London. In Manchester later. In Gateshead still later, in Scotland after midnight. And they said, how could you tolerate, how could you want me to become Shomer Shabbos? You can't do anything. Example, Bozeman, was once there for a prediction. And he said, the only way you can be stimulated is by pressing a button. You're a pretty boring person. It's not the environment. You're going to find something exciting. There's people. In yourself, your own inner life. It's fantastic. Anyway, I'm just saying, if I lived in Montreal, I'd probably think more and more. Just English. That's what Buddha. But when I'm feeling like I should, somebody told me different Pittsburgh. I have a daughter living there. I think I've been there a lot of times. It's fantastic. It's not because it's simple or it's uncomplicated. It is. It's very sophisticated. That's how you look at it. You have to let it, parts of yourself become active. There's parts that have never been stimulated, never been active, never been operating. Let them work. This is a long, long one. It's in Yiddish. And I'm going to give over, basically, the question is, how can the Hanhola, I don't mean Dafka Hanhola, I mean the whole older generation, all the judgmental AK, how can they demand so much money? Why do they expect us to be magicians in the devil like they were? They have that we didn't have. How can they expect us to say that like in previous generations? The babies go with a hat and a jacket. Did you ever hear Yedidus? This is the question. Did you ever hear Yedidus Adoidus? And if the Bachrim today are not like they were, and they have chutzpah and prostkeit, I can promise you, there is plenty of chutzpah and plenty of prostkeit. It's a choice. I envy this consciousness of the Bachrim to the Rebbe of Tavshin Pei Dalet. And once Rabbi in Yeshiva mentions that, you ever heard David to speak to Malach and say, I don't remember, they asked me to come to Moshe Shabbos, came maybe, and said, I'll stay as long as you guys have questions. And they were sitting there writing on the back of the paper plates. And they kept me there till about 3 in the morning. At the end, they said, you saw all that. What do you want from us? So I said, who wants to become 75 years old this second? They laughed also. I said, you're a chassid of the Rebbe, from Tavshin Ayin Hey, whatever it was. And it's a much deeper discussion. There's things that are not there. There are things that are accessible today that I was given everything to have. I was even married, and I made it with my wife that I wouldn't go home from 770 before Yechidus is over, in case I can hear a story. And I get about 2 stories a year, and you get it every week on Jack. Meeting with the Rebbe, books of it. Of the kids, you want to know what the Rebbe is doing, what the Rebbe is saying. The ignorance of the Rebbe. All these things. Yeah, you have to take the good. It's a choice. The good that's there in your situation, whatever city it is, whatever generation you live in, it's not going to change. That's your working thing. Speculating, even in your own life. I told somebody, regretting, thinking back, mistakes, or speculating, anxiety for the future. These are all good backgrounds, maybe. But set the stage is today. Today, everything is happening. This minute you could make. There's a word from the Mitzvah David. It said there's a passage you all know in Tehillim, Kapitel Tzad. Ki elaf shonim b'yadecha, yoim esma. 1,000 years is like a day. So we say the normal types we say is that 1,000 years to us, but in English is like a day. The Mitzvah says an interesting one. I'm telling you how I understand Mitzvah. That if you live 1,000 years where you live one day, it's moving. It's 1,000, it's not 1,001. Life is this today, that's what it is. But you can do something today that will last forever, ever, for 1 billion years, not just 100 years, not 1,000. It's in our hands. You can do something. You can make your life into something which is infinite. And you can be bored or boring. even if you're a teenager. Nothing. You don't become middle-aged when you're 45 years old. You become middle-aged when you're 18 years old. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. You don't look at the world. The Rebbe was always something happening, and it made a difference. Anyway, let's go back to this. What I read is not even a quarter of the 11.
Why?
Basically, look, it's a very good point that what this person is asking. Basically, it's like, what do you want from us at the end of the day? And the answer is, really, work with the situation you have. The chutzpah is a normal part of life. You have to know when and to whom. Chutzpah klapi shmayim. Chutzpah can mean deciding to do something that nobody would expect you to do. That's all it means. Chutzpah means courage on a certain level. And on another level, it's like I tell my talmidim, they say, can I tell you what I'm really thinking? I've heard this many, many times over these last 60 years. I said you can say in my office, anything you want. All I ask is you speak to me like I speak to you, that's all. I don't ask for anything more. I'm not asking for dedicated, you have to stand up when I walk in. You don't have to give me any titles, any cover. Just speak to me direct like I speak to you. And that's how you have a conversation. It's not the generation, in all generations, the people of all times. You look at this, and not only that, each person in their life, you go to different kufas, different periods of your life. And even in any one period, sometimes in one day, there's so many different experiences you have, or relationships that you have to negotiate, that people you have to relate to. You work in it, it's exciting. It's not easy. It's not loyal, but it's beautiful. It makes you powerful. And all the things that all the Kabbalah soil and authority is trying to do, even if it doesn't come across like that, is to try to bring out the best in you. Nobody is trying anything else. And I'm telling you now that I've seen hundreds of people later, and those who have these problems is because they waited till they're 25 years old till they learned the lesson of basic Kabbalah soil, like waking up in the morning. Somebody came to me, a buffer, not from England, and he wanted to get advice on how to go into business and how to become a very successful person. And I got him an appointment with a top multi-millionaire, top of real estate across the whole London. And he offered up some personal service. And he went to him, and the guy told him, the first thing you have to know is you got to get up early in the morning. And this bucker was disappointed in the whole thing. Once he heard that. He said, if you want to be successful, you got to be there on time. Those are not things from doing this. The difference between this door and another door is that there's less of an attention span today. And today in the Fabrega, people serve Torah for the Torah.
David, you want?
I like French. I'm the kind of people I can talk to. But the difference is the verbizing, there's media, there's a very short attention span. We have to fit our B'nai Hashem into that. You get slogans, and Bachim use it. The Bachim of today were Makarim, hundreds of thousands of years. In our days, we're Makarim a few million. All the old Cubans of the whole 1950s and 60s, and maybe even the 70s. And today, you find that I envy those Bachim. So the thing, you have to use the situation that you have to do what you know and what you feel is precious and valuable and lasting and meaningful and deep. And what does that do to your own gaiva? That's a kosher gaiva. You're proud, and how is it? Another question here? My glasses. Is there an issue to smoke? What do you mean by issue? Good or bad? If you're not into it, advice, don't get it. Even vaping or any excuse that they give you. Not good. Not, that's my personal, I'm a guy who smokes. And thank God, I haven't smoked for the last 60 years. I'm younger, Irish guy. Before we knew how healthy it was. But so, they asked the Rebbe, he should answer smoking. The Rebbe never answered it. It's interesting. One of the things the Rebbe said is that water keep it out was his father smoking. But somebody said, but this, so the Rebbe said that it's already covered in the Dinam of the You don't need a special achroza. Plus the fact that for some people it might be, they need it. It's not a miler. It could be somebody who needs it. But to get into it, it's expensive, it's money, it's health, it's relationships, and 1,000 things. And it's known that the cigarette makers are looking for all different excuses, the flavors and the vaping and the this and the that. All these things is because people are becoming a bit smarter. So it's not useful if you're asking my personal advice. It's not what else. Okay, guys. I'm in devil. Yaakov Gorkov said, which is said by Shalom Gorkov Shalom, he very insulting to my friend. About 4 o'clock in the morning, he was crying, screaming, and laughing. He forgets the devil. I feel I'm in Montreal. The most fantastic, exciting city in the world. Or the most boring, uninteresting, nothing happening there city in the world. There's a story with the Fidig Rebbe. In those days, Odessa, Poland, was known as a very withered city, with theaters, with nightlife, with parties, with intellectuals, universities, and there were a lot of Yidden there. And he wanted to fry out sometime to go there. And there were two Hasidim that came to see the Frierdiker Rebbe from Odessa. And they came, they wanted they needed money, they were like Mishalochim type. So the first one, the Rebbe Rayatz asked him, what's happening in Odessa? And he said, it's a great city. You're going to be here 3 times a day. You look at scissors, you make fabrengen. There's real good friends, people you can rely on when you have a problem. We have a tremendous achdus and solidarity, a lot of good stuff. And the Rebbe gave him 10 rubles, or 10, gave him a nice sizable ruble. His friend was sitting at the other side of the room or outside the room, but the door was open. He heard the whole conversation. And he said, this guy is whitewashing the whole story about Odessa. What a liar. When I come to the Rebbe, I'm going to make it clear to you what's happening. So he went into the Frierdiker Rebbe. He said, where are you from? He said, from Odessa. And the Rebbe said, what's happening in Odessa? He says, guys becoming weaker and full of tzibah, and they don't come around, and there's so many distractions, and there's so many timers, and so many this, so many that. And Frierdiker Rebbe gave him a donation, 1 ruble. So he said, Rebbe, I noticed that you gave my friend, my Chava, my best friend, him you gave 10 rubles, and me you gave only 1. Is there a reason? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I'll tell you something. I know what's happening in Odessa. Without asking either of you. But I wanted to know which Odessa do you live in? You have to look for the opportunities in a place. Life can be very boring. Same person, same family, you have the same kids, the same parents. It can be pretty boring. You have good times also. But a lot of it is a drag. But really, it's exciting. It's not always easy. It's not loyal. Like everything you do, anything that's worthwhile doesn't come easy. But that doesn't mean that it's not worth much more. They're paying your price. You want to buy a Rolls Royce, a Lexus, you got to shell out $150,000, whatever they charge nowadays. You pay for it. But you're happy, you're proud, you feel rich. So, in Avodah, it's the same thing. Chaim. All right. Any more questions? Yeah. You can tell the story. Make a comment. I need a story to take back with you. Story. Last week was the Kiddush HaShluchim. And on Friday I went to the oil with everybody. And I went with Yedidenu from England, Libet Brennan. He's one of the organizers of the Kiddush. The main organizer in terms of organization. And I told him, tell me a story of the Rebbe. This was in the car going back to Crown Heights. And I remember his parents, he was from Manchester, not from London. I remember when he was a young boy, he was learning in Eitz Chaim, Litvish behind the Yeshiva in London. And I know he had stories in Yechidus, he asked the Rebbe, he's very smart and very open with the Rebbe. He asked the Rebbe what to do. It's in Yeshiva when they say Tachanam on Yitzhak's Kesslo. This was that. But this time he come like this. Told them he wants to go to learn in some community. He wants to come to New York and learn the Rebbe's Yeshiva. And the Rebbe said, not yet, but be moises and leave it Chassidus. And then there's a whole Yechidus, different points which the Rebbe related to. At the end of the whole Yechidus, he said to the Rebbe Kizor, Dashni moises and leave it Chassidus, can you please be more specific? He asked the Rebbe to tell him what you want me to really do. So the Rebbe said, I want you to learn Chassidus. He was about 16 years old. I want you to learn Chassidus on Monday and Thursdays and Shabbos, which are Yemei HaKiriyah. So for Monday, Rabbi Nachman Sudak, he was in Golders Green Yeshiva. It's another neighborhood. It's like about 7 miles away. He says Rabbi Sudak gives a shiur in Chassidus on Sunday night. You count that as Monday. Go to that shiur. On Thursday, ask Rabbi Hertz, the Rosh Yeshiva there, to learn with you the Maimah V'Yadaita Moskova, the Maimah of V'Yadata of Tofresh Nun Zayin. And Shabbos, there's a Yid in Golders Green called Heschel Gorman, and he kochs sich in Tanya, learn with him Tanya. That's the story. And to me, that story was very powerful, and I'll tell you why. First of all, because it shows that the Rebbe was aware, alert to the detailed shiurim that are taking place, to all the situations that's happening. The Rebbe is in touch with the city. Telling you which night of the week you go to this person and which night to that person. Smile bun. But secondly, and maybe even more, the Rebbe's personal interest in every bacha, in every individual bacha, gave him a direct adracha. And you guys have, it's just those different instruments, through different channels. But you're in the Rebbe's yeshiva, it means your neshama was chosen, not just by the Rebbe Rashab, your neshama was chosen by our Rebbe. And he loves you. And he cares about you. In a Leushen Prot, in a very specific way. And he feels for the struggles, and for the frustrations, and for the hopes, and for the unfulfilled expectations of you in yourself, and for the simchas. He feels and he's there with you at every moment. And you see that as an invitation. I'm telling you now, I asked the Rebbe before I came here, before I came to America, I wrote that I'm in a Fabrenke. And I asked the Rebbe, please help me to say what you want me to say. And I just share with you something which I was not expecting to say. I didn't even know about it 2 weeks ago. I wasn't expecting to say it, and I wasn't expecting to say it 5 minutes ago. But I think that's what I'm supposed to be telling you. To work on a personal relationship with the Rebbe, which comes from touching base, learning. You work out on your level. What's comfortable, plus a bit more. That's not so much. Kind bit. For one person it's learning a Yom Yom, one person it's 10 minutes a day. One other person it's a half hour. Or 3 times a week. And to help another Yid, with Tzoyim, Chava, say a happy word, to somebody who's a bit low that day, and you can tell it on their face. Instead of ignoring them. And try to get a mashpia. Be able to talk with them. Somebody you can trust, and won't be judgmental, and you will be dissimilar. Chaim, that's it.
Yeah.
Somewhere, make sure that you prepare before you go. And when you get there, say something else. and to me, that's really what life is about. You always prepare means live with something good, positive, not because of someone else. And then when you get to a situation, you have to know, what's appropriate in that situation. The oil in the cave. It's a lot. My mistake. It was a mental photograph. It was a mental photograph. Who were the parents Mochkin? The parents Mochkin was Mochkin. I'll tell you, I have a daughter who's married to a great-grandson of her parents. She asked, can I know a lot of children? And all I said to her was, make sure you look after the parents' great-great-grandchildren. He was very, very, very special. And I'll tell you one story about him. The whole Shlichus project, it never has people in the whole world. The whole world is this problem. Somebody phoned me up once. He got from the Chabad or somebody who was writing a book about the Rebbe from Yale University, I think it was, from one of the big universities in America. They're writing 10 books on the 10 most influential Jews of the 20th century. And he was writing about the Rebbe. And he asked for names. He wanted to meet. I wasn't in America. The end is I didn't meet him, but I spoke with him. He said one thing: we were going to meet if I was going to come to America. He could stop and ask the other about it. He wanted to know where is a person? Where did he get the power to get people in their thousands to give up their comfort zone and to go live in a completely different type of environment, not just physical environment, spiritual environment, everything. They said that's a power, you don't find that in the world, anyway. So somebody, I heard in the middle of the lockdown, there was a Fabrengen on Zoom. I heard this story from Moshe Herson. He said in the name of, I don't remember, that somebody, a Lubavitcher Rov, met a very, very world famous Litvish Rov. And the Litvish Rov said, I have the deepest respect for the Lubavitcher Rebbe for what he has achieved in the world. Even though it's not such a fella with an army like he has. So this Chassid told this Litvish Rav, nobody handed the Rebbe an army. They were won over one by one, these people. It's not that the Rebbe took over an organization. Okay, you got 5,000 people, send them where you want. Which would also be a big time. But he said every one of them learned Chassidus, learned Nigla, had struggles, had fakis, had cold moments, had hot moments, sang Nigunin. And the end was, he became focused on doing the Rebbe's Ratzon somewhere, wherever it's needed. And people a little bit older, like myself, remember the times when the Rebbe was Kivayochel pleading with people to go on shlichus. More than that, pleading with parents to allow their children. And these were not parents, children people who come from other communities. These were Chassidim, elder Chassidim. And somebody once heard the Rebbe pleading with a father who was reluctant for his very Chassidish son to go to far away place in those days, might have meant New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Go away. Chicago was like outer space. That was called far away. And the Rebbe said, and this Chassid, the Rebbe was a man, he was 53 years old. And this Chassid was 65 years old. So the Rebbe said, why can't you obey me? For what can't you nicht folgen? Weil ihr seid älter von mir. Just because you're older than me. He said, Peretz Mochkin is older than me and older than you. And he listens to me. This was, somebody heard this in Nadim Natal. Here's the real version.
The Rebbe said two things. I'm
not going to overprop him because it's not public assumption. If it's a Tuesday, first of all, what was it? It was 3 o'clock in the morning. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was a Yeshivas that night. And the Rebbe's mother didn't like the idea that after Yeshivas, 3 o'clock in the morning, which was a regular thing, the Rebbe walks home alone. Even though then at night it was okay. But 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't see anything. So I wanted to go up in, to walk by, pass with the Rebbe, and go behind it. They got some more interest about it, but that's not the game. My time came. And so the Rebbe, I heard two, first of all, they were screaming at each other. When they were talking, they were screaming at each other. The other guy was a wacko. You know what a wacko is?
What's a wacko?
That's underrated. So, the Rebbe says, argument that 12 million or 30 million Yidden are not Bible to me, so another year also won't be Bible to me. Peretz Moshkin is over from both of us, and he's Bible to me, Ka'afra Da'ala. After that, like the earth like the earth,
Dust of the
the
earth.
dirt on the earth. That's what he said that. This is Rebbe number 3. He was in the Babish Market of Shab, and he was Russia Ashliach by the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he was both to the Rebbe's Trubish movement. Mont-Real was Peretz Moshkin. The Babish, the whole Babish in Montreal was Peretz Moshkin.
Say some more.
What's the program?
Who's on?
Ze zijn naar een Danish gekomen.
Next Thursday, by you. A spread like this, can I know a big koyach, a covered like Sanya, to the Bachar who prepared all this. I don't know that he means it's a day that's applauding at the end of the He means a day that I want.
Any questions?
I did this once. And I asked the Rebbe, I had to, it was a Shabbos Mavochim, I was Shnas Avelis, and I asked the Rebbe, what can I do about the 5 Kadeshim after the 5 Svarim of Tillich? And really, it was unrealistic to me, because to me to get all the normal Kadeshim was also a challenge. The Rebbe said, say a Mishnah before Mincha, after Mincha, before Shabbos, after Shabbos. So I was a Shabbos, I had Yotzai, and I was in Camp Amuna, so we couldn't get a minion for Tillich. So I didn't do I did a Kaddish at the bottom after Shabbat. Applause is better than better. I was Billy Feldman's counselor.
I was Billy Feldman's Chabrusa.
Which is a big job.
When he came from
Which is a big job.
Baltimore,
In 1957, Sophie Zion was one to ask him.
You look younger than
Looks like he's Let me tell you something. The last time I was in Sydney, 6-7 years ago, with Gil Zaman. And when he came to Sydney, he had a lot of opposition. A lot of opposition. He's a young guy. Our chief rabbi, Rabbi Sack, phoned me up once. he knew, he had been to Sydney. He said the Pinny Farm was celebrating 50 years or something, 40 years. And he asked him to make a video. So he wanted to look at it about it. And he told me he was disposed. Such a young guy came. He said that's only the Rebbe could take a young person and take over a challenging community. There was a lot of opposition. Wow. And he was 1 year there. I know his name, but I don't think I should say his name. Who supported him, who helped him. Like a Polish, not a Levant. And that Eid was eventually he was in Yiddish. And the Rebbe said, I owe you commission. I owe you commission for looking after my people. Because the Rebbe's person, the Rebbe will take care of it. And he'll take care of every person who takes care of it. But the Rebbe said it. Eventually, this man, Rahman al-Islam, was yoyed min. He lost all his money. So much so, he didn't have a job anymore. And he got a job working in the office of the yeshiva or something. They gave him a job. So he should have basic parnasa. And he went to the Rebbe, and he said, remember when you told me about commission? So the Rebbe said, yes. And he says, I want to collect it. So the Rebbe said to him, I heard this story from you, you check with his name if it's accurate. The Rebbe said, my commission is nachas from the kinder and the enikel. And Penny Feldman told me then, this is about 7 or 8 years ago, that every single one of this man's descendants, they're not all Lubavitch, by the way, but some of them are actually Lubavitch living. Other ones are Ger, whatever, they follow other Jewish shvatim, but they're all like, solid people.
Also Pinya's grandchildren.
His own grandchildren.
What?
His own grandchildren.
Yeah.
Like you.
Besides for me, but the father. But he used to learn with people. He was about 24 years old. The Pincham was about 17 or less. And he was niggling with him. He didn't know Aleph. When he came to 770, there was no Ada, I tell you, there's no Tiferet in Aleph. And he told me, he said, he felt he was more intellectual than the top graduate students in Pennsylvania. I can't whistle. It's possible to have flames without whistling. They said he had a feeling of blameless, and he couldn't drive. As soon as they're driving, he's not a part of it.
That's your next Thursday. Look, somebody wants to say, the floor is now open.
Tell you a story of a yeshiva. The shluchim me'egel hayam. If you're a shliach outside the United States and Canada, you're allowed to come into the Rebbe once every 2 years. And Rabbi Chazakov was Mavare, Mavhi, in the name of the Rebbe. It didn't have to be New York 2 years. For example, if you came to see the Rebbe for Yud Shvat, let's say, Tov Shin Chav Hei, you could come for Yud Kesslo, Tov Shin Chav Zayin. Even though it wasn't 2 years, mamish. A couple of months less, it meant approximately 2 years. Now, I went to England. I left on Chof Hey, Chof Shin Chof Hey. I went to Manchester, my wife, my son, and then Sunday, before the Kalo, I went myself. And meanwhile, Tishrei, Tovshin Chof Tzayim, that's a year after I went, Rabbi Sudak Alomashon went to New York, and I asked him, please phone up my father. My mother had passed away. I give him a good report. Whatever you think of me doesn't make a difference. He should know his son's made a young. It's appreciated. So my father told him, my youngest son is getting married. He kissed him. Tell my son I want him to come for the wedding. So my problem was I was only here for a year and 3 months. That's a lot less than 2 years. So I wrote to Rabbi Chadakov, and I said, please ask the Rebbe what I should do. And the Rebbe wrote, Mikiva sha'oviv loitze, since your father wants, come in. It was a very reiche visit. Came with my wife, and we had a yichidus. But before that, a week before, we just never came in from his house. We used to go home for 1 hour every day. So it's cool for him to went home for 2 hours because of his family. And Rebbe was coming in about 6:30. And you looked into the markets, into the mosquitoes. If you understand my wife, myself, he's not look. He asked how my kids. And he sort of like started walking towards me. And we stood there at least 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Was a little right outside, right by the entrance where they gave $1 later on. Speaking. One of the things that Emma asked, my wife, at that time, had 2 little children. You know, one was 2 years old, one was 1 year old. Couldn't go out, but on Shabbos, there were a few girls, a lot of families, young girls, 12, 13, 15, I don't know what. From the Chabad There's our families that were there. About 3-4 girls. And they used to come every Shabbos. It wasn't an official movement. It was like a family every Shabbos. Maybe decided to get Shalashur this time. So the Rebbe, and so my wife must have written it in a letter at some stage to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, who's looking after those girls this week that you're here? Just an interesting order. Then we went to Yeshivas after Yitzhak Kessler. My brother's chassan was the night after the Yeshivas, which was probably Chof Kessler, and the chassan was Mustama Chafalam. I don't remember the exact years. And the Rebbe asked me that Yeshivas, the brother was getting married. Is he the same brother that you used to learn Chassidus with? And I didn't know what they was talking about really for the first couple of seconds. And really what happened was in Tavshich of Beis, I had a career with my brother Thursday night. It happened maybe 10 times per year. He was going away for Shabbos, I was going away. It wasn't that regular. And to me it was like in a distant memory. And the Rebbe said, is that the same brother used to learn? The Rebbe told him, come. I said, yes. So the Rebbe said, Elech al Chassidus. He's still learning Chassidus. So what should I have told the Rebbe? What should I have told him? See, any suggestion?
Probably,
What?
probably.
That would have been a good one if I would have thought of it. But it wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be honest. I said, ich weiß nicht. And then he gave a big, big smile and said, willst du nicht reden Lashon Hara and brother? You don't want to talk on your Lashon Hara against your brother? Big smile. And then the Rebbe said, I want you to tell him in mind on Achrayim. He said this maybe 3 times, certainly twice. The following. You're saying this without Achrayim. It's not you talking, it's me talking through you. In my number, tell him in my name. As Ovar is over. The Daf letters. Over the past is past. Whatever happened in the past, you have to learn. And you can get it in Hebrew or Yiddish or English. Any language is better for you. That's the Rebbe telling me this. I was staying with my father in Williamsburg with my wife. And the next morning, I went into my brother's room. He was getting married that day. And I said, he got from the Rebbe. He said, really? He remembers me. Knows me. Second to the Rebbe before, years and years before. He said, the Rebbe said, you have to. He was despoiled that the Rebbe cared enough. And remember, he was learning Torah. Never learned a lot. And the Rebbe said, you have to learn Chassidus. And he got married, lived in Borough Park a while, still in with China. And eventually, he lived 40 years in Staten Island, and he used to learn Chassidus with Rabbi Katzman, the Shliach in Staten Island. Now he lives in Lakewood. And then, nothing happened. Then he married off a granddaughter. This was 3 years ago. And there was all the isolation rules. It was still during COVID. So if you came to America or to England, different countries had rules, 2 weeks isolation. The Mechut was a very wealthy person.
very wealthy. And they couldn't afford the time to be in isolation for 2 weeks. So he paid for the whole family to come to England. He shouldn't have to go to America and be in isolation for 2 weeks. So my brother was in England. I was in social distancing, going out, going to school and things, but I didn't really go travel at all. I was careful. But I went to this Keslו. It was about 2 hours public transport. Went there. And I said to my brother, remember they never said you have to learn to see. I'm going to put you in touch with the shliach in Lakewood. I have to bring in Lakewood, Gimel Talmud 2.5 years ago. But this was a few months later. He said, fine. I came home, and our family, during the lockdown, made a minute. We have a large family, and they were all in different, so even there's 4 that are in London, but they're all in different, they're more than a half hour from each other, and from any one of them. And then they're in America, California, Arizona, 3 in Pennsylvania, different cities, Florida, New Jersey, Manhattan, Texas, all over the country. So we made a minute of having a Zoom of the family for an hour or 2 every Sunday. And we start off, I would tell a bar or a myself whatever, and everyone would say what's happening in the shlichus or the family, whatever, what's happening. So that night was a Sunday this Keslו. I came home, and my wife was there on the Zoom with the kids. And I told them what happened. They never told me you do this. And now it's about 50 years later. And then I'm going to arrange him to learn with the shliach in Lakewood. So my kids said to me, why don't you learn with him on Zoom? And we started. It worked, Pachosha. It was similar to the way, it didn't happen every week, necessarily. But we just recently, unfortunately, he had part of his leg amputated. He had a major health problem lately. And just a few weeks ago, we started again. And he says he's going to get the Tanya. He's in the rehab place. He'll get the Tanya there. And, just saying that's the big thing that I tell you from that Yechidus is that the Rebbe said, Ovad is Ovad. 3 words. Profound, profound, profound word. Because sometimes you don't want to do something. You really would want to, but you feel that you already blew it. You did something really you shouldn't have done. Or didn't do something you really should have done. So just think of those 3 words. Over is over. Forget it. Everything is today. Every day is a lifetime. That's really what life is about. Every day is either if it's a 1 day or 1,000 years, it's nothing. It's post, it's finished. It goes every second. The future is becoming the past. It's nothing. There's no moment. There's no present. Except to the end. I once said this to the man of Butterfly. He said right away, I said, since Stocken Hoyer. Because every second, the future is becoming the past. He said, except by the Eibishter, everything is like. And what it means is that if you connect to the Eibishter, or you do something the Eibishter wants you to do, that's forever. That's forever. Over is over. told it, I heard what's the word, I think I heard it from the Rebbe. The horse and Satan, the Fonenu, Miachareinu. There's a Satan that says, I got plenty of time yet, I'm just a young guy. And another Satan which says, it's too late, I blew it away. I made enough mistakes in my young life. And they're both Satans, they're both full. The reality is, that tonight, today, you can create eternity. And that applies to every minute. Chaim, Chaim.
Das sagt, nehmen wir jetzt ein Thema von der und ich gucken weiter.
You heard that word from the Rosh Yeshiva. Good? And they eat a word.
Und nicht gehört.
You want to advice and tell someone in advance.
Don't think about the past, only think about the future.
Amen. Amen.
All the present.
It's good, a backdrop. I tell people the only show in town. Do the silent Allah. Do a mitzvah with greater Hebrew. The place can bring it down. You gotta be, if you have enough wine just for one meal. And the other thing, there was somebody who was thrown into prison in the time of the Radbaz. And the pirates who put him into prison came to him and said, you're in prison, but I'm a nice guy. And I'm going to give you 1 day you can join your community. You can go to down with him. Let him out of prison for a day. This was unheard of 500-600 years ago. You choose the day that you want to go out. So he had all stuff. So you go Yom Kippur. Yosh Hashanah Motzei. So you go Pesach. Because you have 11. What day should we choose? Purim. Purim. How to smell it? You have to do it. The mitzvah to go to a big meeting. So he wrote to the Radbaz, what day should I choose? That's how we know it's in the Jews of the Rabbis. The Rabbis wrote him back, when you get this letter, that day, the next day. You have a chance now, do it now, because that's all, the only thing that exists in this world now. You think you're going to put something on, you'll always push it away. If you say now, it's now. We want Mashiach?
Now!
I once had a son, 5 years old, who had a Fabrengen, it was a Shabbos B'nation, 2 Fabrengen, and he wanted to go home and have Seder Shabbos. It was a couple of hours in between. And I was talking to someone, and he's pulling me to go home. He said, I want to go home. I said, soon. He says, now. I say, soon. He says, now. He said, I want to go now. I said, you're going to go soon. He said, I want to go now. And he said, now with such a chayes. I said, when do you want Mashiach? He says, when we go to the
That's the issue. Das ist die Weihe.
כל דחייה?
כל דחייה קידוש שאח שובד אליי.
Now for sure.
Every delay of something you're supposed to do, the only thing that you know about it is that you're not going to do it now. That's the only thing you can count on. When Mendel used to come, that it says in the Mishnah, even though Yachshav Emusah. So Mendel said that the Achshav is Milel Murah.
Even like Achshav Emerson. What would be the Achshav? It's a mentality, in other words. There's a mentality, I can do something, do it. You do something, won't be so perfect. He once told the Raiders, when they put out a book, challenge, they said they can edit it further. The Rebbe said, if you work on it harder, it'll be better. But it's more important that it should be sooner.
You told them we're coming tomorrow. Behind for sure. Morgen weiß man nicht. Actually, while they're late.
We need like have speaking.
Yeah. Okay, boys.
No.
Time to call it a day.
Whoa! No.
The Meister. One time, we have to call Mordechai the Yavon to swell. Lifnei or Achrei? Der hat schon fertig gezogen oder noch nicht? Das ist auch Achrei. Der Rebbe gesagt, es dann 45 minutes. When we gonna call them, wasn't there a big red? So Mordechai, you told me, why not ask the Rebbe? Why was the need?
I heard this story from the Mונטריאול in Florida. He said it in Malamalki in Bel Harbor, in Miami, about 15 years ago. I think that he asked the Rebbe, if he wanted to, he didn't say who the mosque was, he said it was a mosque, of course. And he asked the Rebbe, what's wrong with this? And the Rebbe realized, and the Rebbe told the mosque to call him up, he says, here's the Rebbe, I'm not telling you. The Rebbe is only with me, that you should set up the mosque. That's what he told me, the 300 people in Miami.
Viele die Gold legen in Ordnung, später die Jungen bleiben.
And he also asked,
Can you repeat that?
We didn't hear the story.
Repeat what Mordechai said? In Florida, can you repeat that? Couldn't hear over here. Can you repeat that? We couldn't hear what you said.
I will repeat it, but I tell you, it's not necessarily, it's something that if you don't know it, you can live 180 years and be a tzaddik gomer, v'yira v'ava b'tanugim, even if you don't know it. It was just that the chief rabbi, the Rishon LeZion of Israel, was spoke on the phone with the Rebbe for 45 minutes. So two different secretaries of the Rebbe phoned him to ask. They were just curious to know what it was about. And he said, look, I wasn't the only one on the phone. You can ask the Rebbe. That's it.
Why do you have to call so far? You can call
I heard that the Rebbe, that he asked the Rebbe, well, did you want to check on me? And the Rebbe told the mosque, he didn't give any name of the mosque. I heard this story from Mordechai myself. And in a public thing. He said the mosque called back that the Rebbe said, told the mosque, called him to assure him that the Rebbe did not tell him to ask that question. Okay.
What can you tell us about Yankov Cove?
About
Yankov Cove.
Yankel
I heard.
Dat is één ding.
de Verbindung door Montreal, Yankel recovered the Gemeente Montreal by Schoenberg's house. Never like it.
I told it. There was more.
Came into Montreal for his son's wedding, Schoenberg recovered.
I'll tell you something about your uncle.
So I think this character here, I think he talked him into, we weren't in shooter together. When he scratches his ears, you sign this because I was together with him.
That's enough.
Anyway, he talked
I'll
to me.
tell you
he talked to me-
I'll tell you about your uncle. The uncle his birthday was in Khatam. How do I know? He once told me a story. There was a little boy about 11, 12 years old, and he went swimming, and he was drowning. And a person saved his life. Pashat Mamash Shuter rescued him. And he said, I'm going to sit down. He was like 12, 13, but not much more, but a mitzvah, maybe younger than mitzvah. But the Yid said to him, when I die, say Kaddish for me. It turned out, he found out, he looked into it, this man had no children. That motherless lad. And the man said, say Kaddish. So he followed this person, and the end is, the person passed away on Ches Tammuz, on Yaakov Zucker's birthday. That's Tammuz. Now, Yaakov Zucker was a sergeant, and I can he was an old Jew, and he worked on being Makar people. You know Mr. Glick in London? Rabbi Avraham Glick, they ever called him the tankist of Europe. He was a businessman. Rabbi Avraham was Makar and many other people. Even though he could speak English. And he was a big Morosh Choyim. He worked on Mivtzoim. They ever made Mivtza Mezuzah, he took Mezuzahs and he checked them. I was working with university students. I gave him, like once I gave him a bunch of Mezuzahs in an envelope. And he brought them back, and he threw them down on my desk and said, "Calm kosher." He's just about kosher. So I told him in a very respectful way, he's much older than me. I said, "Could you tell me, is there a bigger difference between Pasul and Kam kosher versus Kam kosher and the biggest hit that ever happened in this world? Which is a bigger separation?" In other words, if it's kosher, it can't kosher. It's kosher. It's kosher just like the most Mehudadik mezuzah is kosher. Make it sound like it's, it's just about kosher.
Peanut.
But he gave me a very good answer. He said, Kam kosher is be'ein adoich, better than not kosher. It's true. But I'm saying it's Kam kosher, you should know that it's olu, it's prone to get frayed and to become possible.
Machaykek.
As it is now, it's perfect. That was an answer. Another time I asked him, all this is the background for this story I'm going to tell you. It's all a story from the Yom Kippur War. Now, then, I asked him why are you so monoshkoy? In a respectful way. He said, why are you always so monoshkoy? So he told me a story that he wrote to the Rebbe when he was in the Yeshivas, and he told the Rebbe that he's very monoshkoy. What should he do? He said, the Rebbe told me, like it says in Tanya,
that a person who has the Tema Morish Choyle, Kamoshu must meet Bilimudai B'Tivot. So put it, your Morish Choyle, put it into Hasmoda and learning Torah. So he said, the Rebbe didn't give me an answer how to get rid of it. It's a simon that that's me. And you can't do it time. All this is a background. Then it came the Yom Kippur War. Yom Kippur War, Yidden were dying. Very hard. Very, very hard. The Rebbe said, all Fabrengi, the Gimel Tishrei, that since it's Chodesh Tishrei after Yom Kippur, it's a mitzvah to be b'simcha. Whatever you want to achieve with Tachnun, you'll achieve with Simcha. And even more, because Tachnun is Lefiyerech, proportional to your Tachnun will be the bracha. But it means b'simcha, it's not saying Tachnun is the mitzvah. Not saying it's a bracha. Saying is always, it depends who you are. So we were sitting Chalamoy Sukkis in the Sukkah. A bunch of Yiddish, including Dr. Gurka, Beryl Levine, Leidish Vogel, Shmuel Luke, Tali Lowenthal, Mully Liberov. That's at least six. At least one other I don't remember at the moment. And we're trying to fabricate. We know there's a war going on. It was a shock. It's cold, London, October. This not in the sukkah. We're trying to make believe you're b'simcha. And it's quiet. And suddenly, Yaakov breaks the silence. And he says, Ich bin nicht b'simcha. I am not b'simcha, which was typical, but this was like at that moment, it's like somebody saying, why do I need a Rebbe? He said, Ich bin nicht b'simcha. And then the other one, nameless, says, I agree with him. Who can sleep at night? You can sleep at night. The Feimish Vogel says he was an overlord. His father had just passed away a few months before. And he said, come 7 o'clock in the morning, we can't get a minion together. It doesn't look like people have a problem sleeping. Nobody's coming in the morning. And then Mully Liberov screams. He was a very, very, very big Balamuna. And he starts screaming, Falvos, sich nicht auf Nisim, sag Tillen. He said, don't rely on the miracles, say Tillen. Which is itself, talk about the L'mayim Mantel. And meanwhile, in the middle of all this, was coming back from a Pula. We were already back, we had been somewhere before we stopped. And he's singing, he came with 2 or 3 guys, and they're singing, so Machta came in to the sukkah, was singing one of Freilach, and they were singing with the Machta. Then, Rabbi Beryl Levine told a story that happened in Russia, under the communists. He was in an underground yeshiva, which was learning, they used to learn in shul, in a Bible shul or somewhere. They would have, it was illegal for big groups to gather. They had so the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, had about 50 yeshivas, each one had 5, 6 buffers, learning in different places. So it shouldn't be too obvious to the neighbors who reported to the police. So they're sitting in the shul, and they're learning Chassidus. And in the Maimon was talking about Havaya de Leila and Havaya de Lazar. It says, Hashem Kelach Mechanah. So in Kabbalah says there's a higher Havaya, lower Havaya, and the Maimon was going by Riches into the different, the Havaya Leila and Lazar. And there was a Choshen the Yid, not a Choshen, but he was the Gabbai of the Shul. And he's in the shul because he lived there basically. And he hears these guys for half an hour talking about later, and he starts screaming at them. What do you mean about the Amish to finish? What are you going into levels? The Amish to. So Beryl Levine said that we're sitting there talking about Simcha, cannabis. 7 o'clock morning, they don't Simcha, and in comes somebody and zinc matans. He said, that's just you do what you're supposed to do. That's the story. Giving you a snapshot of life in the middle of the people world. You want another story of the Yom Kippur War? Yeah? I'll tell you a story to blow you away. Blow you away. This story I had no intention of telling. I only thought it was not. Because I mentioned there's a certain city. I'm not going to say the city because the story is still happening. Still in the middle. The city in the United Kingdom, UK. And about 60 years ago, in that city, it's a city with not a single shrine in those days anyway, or a black hat probably. It's not like, modern, maybe modern Orthodox, I'm sure that. There's no real obvious. I don't know if there are any Yidden who went with yarmulkes in their work day, in their secular work. But there was a boy there, a young boy, and he loved Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit to him meant Shabbos going to the next in the shul. That was the only religious thing that he had. And he loved it. And he went to the camp, to the Machaneh in the summer. And then as soon as he was able to leave the country, when he finished learning, he was 16, 17 years old, he made Aliyah. And he went to Kibbutz Lavi. Have you have Kibbutz Lavi? What do they do there?
Furniture.
They make furniture. Sure. He went there, but he was so young that they designated a couple to be like his unofficial parents, to look after him. This must be 55 years ago. And then came Yom Kippur War. And he was Meguyas. He was called up, like everybody else. And he was one of the nearly 3,000 Tayyid and Neshamas that died on Kiddush Hashem. And he had a sister. His family was just a brother and a sister. And his sister became very fapistic, very, very negative to anything Jewish. Not because he died. He looked and believed in it. He died for his country, for his people, for his religion. It's Kiddush Hashem, it's of course. But she felt that the community was insensitive to the plight of her mother. Whether she was right or wrong, it's very, very likely she was not even right. But she felt, and she went away from shul, she went away from anything Judaism and anything Jewish. She made it a business to marry a girl. That's what happened. Now, that guy and that Jewish woman had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And then Chabad, a shaliach came to that city because there's a campus there. He's a campus shaliach. But he deals with the town also. And the couple, now elderly couple, 50 years later, this story happened over 5 years ago. So 45 years later, 50 years after he went there, this couple is now older people, and they heard Chabad as a shaliach there. So they called him up, they told him the story, I heard it from him. They called him the shaliach, and they told him about this woman, and they said, be makar of her. Look her up. So what's her name? What's her address? Phone number, email, Instagram, whatever. TikTok. Snapchat. You know, it didn't know any identifying screen name or anything. But the shliach tzich gefoiled. He worked hard, and he found out exactly who this woman was, and exactly where she's living, and exactly what her phone number is. And he decided he's not going to phone her. He'll go to the house direct at 6 p.m. Why 6 p.m.? Because 6 o'clock, whoever works in the day is home. And whoever's going out in the evening hasn't gone out. Made that cheshbon, and there was Magid Shluchim, and they went with a bacham, with that yichud. He went to the house, knocked on the door, there was no answer. But he decided he can't be it. He waited. And then 15, 20 minutes later, comes this woman with 2 dogs. And she takes one look at the guys with black hats, waiting to talk to him. And she said, give me 5 minutes to straighten out the house, be more respectable. She called them in. And they said, look, you have kids. Do you mind if I try to get in touch with them? She said, my kids were brought up with zero. My son was in a shul once in his life when he was 4 years old. What was it? Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av. He was just later on the fire, Chassid, didn't know. Doesn't even remember, just know that he was once in the shul. So you have nothing to really. On the other hand, my children were brought up to be polite. So if you get in touch with them, do what you want. They're adults, they're in their 20s. You want to get in touch with them, get in touch with them. So the shaliach got in touch with his son. It wasn't the daughter I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the son. And he came to him, and he brought what's called a term card. In the universities, they have programs, and there's 3 terms in the year in England, in the university. There's autumn, there's, one second. There's autumn, there's spring, and there's summer. There's no winter. That's what they call it. And every term, these special societies, the groups, at the universities make up what they call a term card that looks like this. And they'll say, autumn term 1984. They'll say Chabad of Cambridge, or whatever it is. And inside, it'll say what we are, every Friday night this term. It's 10 Friday nights. One Friday night, Israeli ambassadors. One Friday night, some from the PLO will speak. Another Friday, a Shabbos is a Russian Shabbos. All the students from Russia will make borscht instead of chicken soup. I was once at such a Shabbos in Cambridge. This was not Cambridge, but the, and all kinds of different things. lawyer will speak, Jewish future, marrying out. Then another page is all the shiurim, regular shiurim, like every Monday is pasha and pizza. And every Tuesday is lunch and learn. And every Thursday is challah bake with the Rebbe. They're doing a lot of Chabad houses. So he goes to this guy and he reads this term card. And he explains to him, he says, come along, you meet people in their 20s. You'll be able to socialize with young people. So the guy says, look, thank you for the card. Yeah, you know, I was never in a synagogue. He was very polite, very nice. It came Friday night and he didn't turn up. Second week he didn't turn up. The third week, he appeared wearing a coat and sat in the coat in the corner of the table, nearest to the door. Only just watching everything happen. Didn't say a single word. Then a few days later, he came to Pasha and Pizza, something in the week. And then he started coming every Friday night. I heard the story about 6-7 years ago from the Shliach that was in for the kiddos. And we had a special meeting of all campus shluchim of England, including myself, because even though I haven't done it the last 48 years, but I was the one that began campus work in England 55 years ago. So, the week, he's coming there for about 6-7 weeks. And the Shliach announced Friday night, next week, I'm not going to be here. Because I'm going to a conference in New York of thousands of rabbis. See this? His wife will be here, or maybe they have a bus. I don't know what arrangement they made. And this boy waited till everybody went home. He was the last one at midnight, maybe. And he said to the rabbi, Shliach, would it be appropriate for me to ask you to bring me something from New York? The Shliach said, sure, it's appropriate. What do you want me to bring? He said, a picture of the man. He said, which man? The man that's on the wall in your house. He didn't know the name. What is it? Just like a man on the wall. So Shliach said, definitely. Can I ask you a question? Would it be appropriate for me to ask you why you want the picture? So he says, I'll tell you. So you come to me, you bring me your card, and you're selling me your product. You know, in the 21st century, a lot of people giving out cards to speak. This one has selling vitamins. This one is selling a special vegan diet. This one is selling alternative medicine. This one's got a gym plan, a gym. Everyone's selling their product, what they want to sell you. As far as I was concerned, you came to me. I was polite because I was going to be polite. But I was not interested. You're just another person selling another thing. I put the program down, and 2 weeks later, I was clearing up my flat, my apartment, and I decided throwing it out. Before I threw it out, on the back page, there was the web. The link to the web. So I went onto the web. And then I went onto the link on the web, and he went onto the link, and there was the man. He saw a Sikh of the Rebbe. And I heard him talking. And I was very, very impressed. Because he didn't sound like he's trying to sell me his thing. He sounds like he's trying to bring something out of me. I said, wow, this is not something you find nowadays. And I decided I'm going to check it out. That's why I came Friday night to check it out. And then I thought maybe it's a fluke. I came to a weekday thing, and I saw this is something they tossed me. And I wanted his picture. When I heard this story, I'll tell you in a minute where the story's holding now. I cried. Because I deal with the young generation. We didn't see Gimel Daled. And my job as a principal of a school is to try to connect my Talmidim with the Rebbe. And you ask yourself, is it possible? And here's somebody who never knew a Tzuras Aleph, even when he asked to the picture. Never was in a shul except for a short while at the age of 14, you know what? Doesn't remember it altogether, his mother said. Living in a town, we never went out, you go in London, you're going to meet a former Yid, somewhere, here, there, New York for sure. But he's living in a town, we never in his life, by the way, I found out later on, we living in the most British, grubber part of the town. And he felt that Rebbe is being Ma'or Ma'yichid. That's felt to Rebbe. This was the Kiddush Shluchim time, and the Shlich told the story. And I made him tell it over to me personally, and I cried. Because I was moved. Then, about 6 months later, Pesach time, I had to call him to Shlich about something. I said, what's happening with this guy? He said, he's still coming. Then I met the Shlich in the summer, you know, when we had a Kiddush Shluchim in England. I said, what's happening with the guy? I said, what happened to Rebbe's picture? He said, you can be mispolled. He's living in a part of town with all working men. Goyim, a town with a very small minority of Jews. They don't know what a Jew is. And you go into his house, and there's a wall with a big picture there, but nothing else on the wall. I said, does he put on tefillin? He said he has a direct connection with the Rebbe, that's it. If I come there, if I bring tefillin to the house, I'm not tefillin. But he is the chassid of the Rebbe. Then it went by another 6 months. Whatever. I talked to Shliach maybe 2 or 3 times a year for practical things. I said, what's happening with the guy? He said he's dating the Jewish girl who he met at the Chabad on the Friday night. And then, so he's looking again, some more months, and the guy got married to that girl. American. And he sent me pictures somewhere. He sent me pictures of the chassan. First they checked, the nearest Besdin was Manchester. Very, very machmir. They did all the research that everyone is 100% Jewish. And at the chassan, you see there a good minion of people with beards and black hats and things which that whole town doesn't have. Except for the and he's had a couple of kids since then. And they get married, you know, he's a Jewish balabas. So, why is that story? Why do I say blow your mind? Because it's saying that in today's world, with 1,000 times less than everyone in this room has, with 10,000 times less, You can connect. You can connect. And the Rebbe is the one that will bring out you. Not your obligation that the Rebbe needs you. There's a level that the Rebbe needs you, the Rebbe needs you. But it's not here that each of us connected is experiencing a different dimension of living, of neshama, than you ever would have felt any other way. That's my story. Chaim, or
We need another story.
what? This is the coming attractions. You
I
know?
can tell no stories, you know.
The what?
Other guys don't have this ringer is not the regular spider. In all the years, it only happened a few times. This character will tell you exactly. If a weekday for breaking, the Rebbe would call out, and not, I know I was there, I know it was more than once. Shmuel Luz was Rogan Machayim, which is Rebbe in the history. It's a block. I can't fill up my hands. He told people to say, L'chaim, the Bochrim, Moshe Fellow too. Moshe Fellow. There's only a few. This character is one of them.
Wow.
Like unhard, stop it from that
I want to be accurate.
Oh, here we go. He wants to be accurate. Self-praise.
No, they never called me up a couple of times. True. 3 times.
Thank you very much. That's true. Yeah.
Not saying that. He called me up to get mashke. He said, so Moshe Fellow, when he was on clear, this was beautiful. You can hear on the tape.
I was
Right
there.
after the Sikha of the 4 teachers, ever said, there's 2 new officers. Actually, fellow was there. And he called up a rebel camp, they just moved to Philadelphia. And Moshe just moved them up before that to Minnesota. And he said, the Shmogel, who will lose? They'll never fight the Shmogel. And he gave me much, yeah. For Moshe Fellow.
When he called out, Shmuel Luz was Rogan Machayim. She's older than me, so I tell you it's not once. It's more.
That was the Shmuel Shmuel.
100% sure. It's not 99. I don't care what he says. He's absolutely nothing. He said more than one Shmuel Luz was Rogan Machayim.
He called me up to get mashke. When the Tanya in English, he called up 2 or 3 people. He said all the people are me. But he said by name 2 or 3, including myself. Not me, people look special. He gave out. All the, it was Tezayin too. And we were going to the airport. The taxis were there, waiting. He never said a shit, huh? And he gave, well, there's a whole story behind it. He talked to him, $1 Shmuel went to the school like every year. And my wife went. And our son, Solomon Ben, the same shift. And we couldn't hear. I'm going to say that. My daughter's married to Meir Shlomo and my name. That Shalom guy there was half a year old. So he was almost 50 years. I told my Shver, you're taking him, not Akel. They said you take Taf. The Rebbe walked out of his room and he saw this boy and he smiled or something. My Shver said, it's Tom. So the Rebbe said, next year, the whole family should come. And he talked to Lamadalik. It was unheard of. He was an 8th child. Come on, a family of 10 people. It was unheard of. Even Tishma. Shavuot. So I was not sure. I said to my wife, whatever happens, all of us have to come. B'meshech Hashem. But all together, I'm not sure if he got inspiration from the Rebbe. I told my Shver. So he was in New York for Yishvat. Then was in Yechidus. And he told the Rebbe, Shmuel is Misufah. You actually want the whole family to come together for Shmuel. So the Rebbe said, you don't always get it right, but this time you did. I said, the first half of the sentence was proof for me for the second half. Anyway, so we all came. Now, that Lamadal with my Shver came a girl who used to eat, the family which came up to her. And then they were Yodim, then they lived in Stanford Hill. The house was she used to eat in school every day. And the Shabbos, Friday night she ate by us. Shabbos she ate by Shabbos. And I used to walk her home, the block. And 1 week, Yitzchak Groner was staying with us. And I said, I'll be back in 10 minutes. So I have to walk her home. He said, I'm coming with. So, I'll come with. So I used to walk with her every week. And across the street from her house, I stopped and I waited till she went in, but I didn't go till Mama to the house. This was the simon when you walked out of home that way. You used to walk till across the street, and the Rebbe would signal to Vayochel. The Rebbe would lock the windows, or touch the window lock. Take away the window shade, and maybe it was a simon. Thank you very much. So I used to walk her. I used to say, this reminds me of walking with the Rebbe, and I was waiting across the street when she went. So I would go with this Yitzchak Groner, and I said to him, this was how we used to walk the Rebbe home. He said, what do you walk the Rebbe home? He didn't know the whole thing. It's only a lady here. So he said, who uses the Bachar? I said, I was told by the woman. He says, well, how did I choose that? I said, they were pretty Chassidish Bachar. And it's in the middle of the street, Stanford Hill. He screamed. He said, brother, you know, he could scream. He told me a story of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov wanted to know, who am I going to be next to in Gan Eden? And they gave him a name. So he went to the town where this guy lived. Nobody heard of him. And then he found out that at back of town, Poshet to you. Very, very obese. Terribly overweight. And he wanted to watch the guys on Hogwarts. And he looked through the window. And the guy for breakfast has about 3 loaves of bread and about 25 eggs and cake and this and that. And lunch similar, supper similar. Poshet's good, hungry guests at every meal. Somebody next to this guy can eat. They told him Umayla, they don't make no mistakes. So this brother told me the story in Stanford. So he asked this guy, tell me your life story. And stuff like this, this, when he was 10 years old. he was going on a business trip with his father. They went to the forest. His father had a big amount of money. And Ganovim came. And they took the money and they tied my father to a tree. And they said they're going to burn him. He said, please don't. They said, we have to because otherwise you're going to master on us. We have to kill you. But they said, we'll let you go if you shmatz him. And he said, that I will not do. And they lit the fire and he burned. So this man tells the Baal Shem Tov, he burned. In 30 seconds he was dead. And I made a achlokah that I'm going to eat in such a way that when they burn me, they're going to have to wait a long time. In other words, every bite he was taking was not stam a mitzvah. Every bite he was taking was l'shem l'kadosh to die al kiddush Hashem. It was Shema Yisrael of Nila. Every single bite that he ever took of all that food. So Yisrael go and squeak. That's the kind of a guy should walk to Rebbe home. That's what he should walk with. Look, the big fat guy.
He wasn't exactly skinny.
Anyway, so that girl, the Tavshin Lamedal, she was there, he couldn't get shidduchim, he tried, there weren't many people around. England, it wasn't like today. And my shver came with her, and my wife actually suggested a shidduch of one of the group alike, a bacha, who was there with the group from England. And my shver said, I don't have time for it now. I'm going into Yeshivas in a few minutes. You know, remind me a different time. Back in England, whatever. And he went to Yeshivas, and the Rebbe said, I want you to find a shidduch for that girl. The Rebbe said, I'll pay you shadchonis. So my shver came out and he's immediately looked for my wife. He said, 1 minute. What were you saying about that? And a few weeks later they were engaged. That summer, Toshel Lamed Dalit. My shver, they're both from England, he's a shliach of a town. The Rebbe, my shver wrote to the Rebbe a telegram. This girl is engaged. I'll let you know what I want for Shakon. Put it in the telegram. And that's it. The next year came with 74 Tanyas, Satsina, that's English, Hebrew, English. And he wrote to the Rebbe that you promised me shadchon. What I want is you should give a yechidus to the Vad, 4 people who worked on the Tanya, and give each of us an autographed Tanya that you should sign, and I will consider the shadchonis paid in full. The Rebbe wrote back, the answer is a hell-like loy. The Rebbe wrote back, when you wrote about Yechidus, and that word, the Rebbe said, Yechidus, all the doiris was only special moments, special occasion, and the Rebbe would not do Yechidus. Elo, Namoy Bachutz, the Rebbe said, I'll stand outside and say a few words and give you the time. Now in Giluyim, which is bigger? The Rebbe standing out there, there were people coming in cars and they thought this is the Isgalis, Mashiach. They parked their cars and they ran right to 77. They were standing outside in a beautiful sunny day, saying a sikha. And at the end, the Rebbe gave, there was 2 sikhs the Rebbe said about that Tanya already. One was Erev Shabbos, and one was Shabbos Nosor, Yudai Siva. This was the science. So the 2 sikhs, there was already a halacha, and the Rebbe made corrections and additions on it. And but the 4 Tanyas which the Rebbe signed, he wrote Lamaskeres, Ishus Haga Shavuos, Toshel Lamadei, Lamaskeres, Shmoya Kodesh. And in those, each of those 4, and 2 others who were really on the Vad, but Mashveh didn't ask to that, that they got a copy of that Sikha, which, with the Hagoyes, but not the Rebbe's, Rabbi Grona wrote out copies, the Rebbe's Hagoyes from the Rebbe's copy, onto a paper, and those who photocopied, those 6 people got that time. All other shluchim who were there from English-speaking countries, for example, Rabbi Grona, for example, Rabbi Shepton, for example, myself, all shluchim from English-speaking country and balabashtim from England were given by the Rebbe V'Yodai HaKadosha that Satzino Tanya, all boys, all children like my sons that were born then, and all shluchim to non-English speaking countries, like Rabbi Ashkenazi, from Kfar Chabad, received a small Tanya printed in Kfar Chabad, V'Yodai HaKadosh. And the girls were given $1 for lighting candles the first year. And Neshek started Chodalet Elul Tovshel Lamed. This was designed Simon, less than a year. It was 9 months after the Rebbe made the bill. Give $1. And then the Rebbe called me. Oh. That's that was one of the times the Rebbe called me. I never knew until about 5-10 years ago. Your cousins, Rabbi Nachman Shapiro, my Mechut, he just told me a few years ago, he was there, standing near the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, Ich will etwas geben zu Shmuel. He didn't know what to give. So the Rebbe took out of his pocket his own copy, the original Ksav Yad Hagoyes on that Sikha. He pulled me up again, gave it to me, and he said, Machen a Fotostat in England und abschicken zurück. Those words. And then he picked up 2 hands and gave me a big smile. And I told my wife, I'm very scared. What's going to happen? I was on the plane. I got on the plane. I said, it looked like a goodbye. That's what I said. And the next year, exactly a year later, I had meningitis. And I was wasted. I was 3 weeks in the hospital and whatever. Baruch Hashem, still here. Anyway, so now, so I took this thing, Lipa Brennan Hanal, he was a bacher, and he had a photocopier there for Shabbos, whatever. He had access to the photocopier in Gaza. He heard the whole thing. He said to me, I'll make a copy right now. He's got to go to the taxi. He made a copy. I made a copy anyway in England, the Rebbe said. I sent it to New York. And I wanted to be sure that when I sent a letter, even with money, all right, if it doesn't get there, it doesn't get there. But here, the Rebbe said, today. So I called up, what?
Send back the copy.
Copy
Original. And I called up Rabbi Klein. He said it was received. Then I got to the Rebbe. It might be the only time I got to the Rebbe on this camel, like from mosquitoes. And in it was the printed sikha of all the three. The printed version. And I asked Rabbi Klein, did the Rebbe personally put that sikha into that envelope? And he said, yes. I said, I knew it. He said, how do you know? I said, because it didn't have the Shabbat. No maskir, the Rebbe says, send the sikha, and it had no staple in it. It was like maybe the first version of it. That's the story. Next week is the continuation. Okay, boys.
You're tired.
It's only 1 o'clock.
בדרך אגב, הגרוע פרקטי, מה מביאים Yes. How many is it? 2?
It's the same story. The Shinui Neschais. Huh? Shinui Neschais. Different Nusach.
Just that story there.
But I told him this thing, and because he went to Shabbat Kodesh, 6 people went. He went and he paid for one of those. 4 paid themselves, 2 paid somebody else. Now, so a lot of things happened at Motzi Shabbos. The 2 Riechers by the Rebbe Tzimchan. But I'll tell you one word. Moshe Feld used to write an article. It was called "We Travel to Educate." It was like he wrote stories that, and then he was writing a little bit that happened in the Torah, but then he stopped writing because his work became much more. And it was Muga every week. And the Rebbe in Chana got the Jewish press by stories. And the Rebbe. So we came in, and the Rebbe said, why did you stop writing? So he said, it's the tuich. Now I'm doing it. But she was very quick and sharp. She said, schreiben is euch getan. Writing is also doing.
Very sharp.
Very sharp, quick. Another one-liner, just one more. This I heard from Handel Lieberman on Yud Shvat HaGodel. Shabbos Yud Shvat Tashon Lamed. Went to his house for Kiddush. And he said, he told the Rebbe Tzimchan, she schwer zu malen a Rebbe on a Streimel. It's hard to paint a Rebbe without a Streimel. She shot back, the junge suchen Rebbe und the alte suchen Streimel. See, the young people are looking for a Rebbe, and the old people are looking for a Streimel. It's a very deep word. It's Giluyim. You're looking for a dollar or you're looking for a Rebbe?
You're so sharp, I'm telling you.
She was very sharp, very quick. And the Rebbe Tzim also, by the way, the Rebbe Tzim was... What?
You used to say the Rebbe takes after his mother, not his father. Father had a head for learning her. She's very sharp, boy, when you boy. Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I'm going to tell my story. When a Bacha comes over to me, Bacha tells me, it's the first day Shavuos. So I got married for faith. Gimel, double, for raise. I don't know. Over 50 years ago. Someone comes over to me. Zalman Duchman. Paris Mochkin. Adventure Shemter. Games of Reb Zichane. Eerst took Shavuos. De Milchig dort niet. Het lunch is dort niet. De cheesecake met al die zaken. So when he wants to me, let's get away.
Who's that?
I don't know, I don't remember. One of my guys, and I had spies always going around giving me information. Ich heb mij gehad dat dat is. Samen toch met de bench again in Bonderijn. Perhaps will see me there or shoot me. So how are we going to get in? They say we're going to come down. Prepare. Okay, so I go with another book.
You go?
I went another book. I forgot who it was. To go to the...
You offer to the Rebbe to...
So we come to the door. Or we come there, says, you're talking, not me. I said, excuse me, who made that up? I'm not talking.
What?
I should do the talking. Okay, I'll do the talking. Anything's going to work. So, for example, the Zen gechantet. So geht's hier in der Herd, dass wir kommen die älteren Sieden, kommen machen Kiddush, kommen nach Reishof, zuzugreden. De vader werd er kennen blijven. No, maybe the finish, my boss is cooked, come to life. So we helped a little bit. I was sitting in parents. Just so we could say that. Anyway, what we hid in another room. We hid in another room. And dein pedestal. But there, like the half.
What?
He was Rebellion. Pettit was the Pettit's with her doing Rebellion. Pettit said,
What were they talking about?
the Rebbe, Pettit's only but the Rebbe. What did he say? That what about the old Khan? What did he say? What's not to say? He says, your shots nicht was hot. Your shots nicht was hot. He sent it over maybe 20 times. And Pettit said, I'll see a guy getting gekocht. And then he says, your shots nicht was hot.
I never heard
She
about it.
came down once when the so I was upstairs. So I had to talk to somebody. Forgot who anyway, I'm walking down the stairs and there were some people going behind me. I start walking down. Boom, she's walking in front of me. Because the woman went out later. We didn't see the woman altogether. So then I knew she's going to go into the, and I was right behind her, and I knew she's going to go into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's going to open the door. He's going to see me. Probably, I'm standing up out of, shouldn't see. The guys were listening. No, may you move. I said, hey, take a look. I have, take a look who was in front of me. Anyway, she comes up, and she clapped up in tears.
What?
She knocks on the door. She doesn't answer. She knocked 3 times. He doesn't open the door. So she, there was a handle by the door. There wasn't a knob on the door. I mean,
It still is.
there was
A clamp.
a clump, whatever you call it. So she takes it and she put it up in the middle. A lot of noise stuck. She did it. Anyway, he opens up the door. Rebbe opens the door and she says, "Entschuldigt bist mir, das so getummelt." Der Rebbe gave our lap. The Mama geschuldet sich zu der Sohn. He gave our lap. He gave our lap. Something like that. It was like a noise. The Rebbe gave our lap. He left the door open, put on his coat. And she got mit Yontif Shabbos. He got mit the mantle. Even in the summertime. And he walked them home. And he used to walk her, hold her under the arm, hold her there. So
Walked one step behind them.
So,
I once followed them.
all right, Father.
When
you tell us.
after the Seder, in the second night of Pesach, before the Rebbe, he walked home to pray.
She was tired. She stopped and sang.
The what?
The Rebbe looked ahead, and she was stopped saying, "John to today, John to today." Smart.
I think one time the Rebbe walked with the Rebbe.
How much he paid, and after the Seder,
That's what it said.
there's a Rav in the Oira Chaim Shul, near Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, with my daughter is Uyo Rigby. This rabbi's about 95. And he told me that he met the Rebbe when I first started coming there, when they moved in. On the second night of Pesach, Tovshin Yud Beis, I think. After the Seder, he was engaged or he was married. His color was from Crown Heights. And he met the Rebbe walking the street. And he said, "Good Yom Tov." And the Rebbe was going with the Rebbe. The Rebbe used to meet the Rebbetzin outside the Koilel on Union
So
Street.
it's good. I don't know.
One time,
Rebbe guy in the front, der Rebbe warten auf ihn, he wait a little.
the Rebbe was late coming home on Friday night.
She got nervous.
And the Rebbe Chaim came out of the house. And she asked the Bacha, was there a Fabrengen today? It was very, very late. Much later than she expected. And he said,
And he said, no. So she said, does he mind going and checking, seeing where? And he started walking. And then the Rebbe was walking behind him. And they see the Rebbe turning into Brooklyn Avenue. So he had to run away. So the Rebbe said, you don't leave a woman alone in New York at night. The election's a long one.
And that's and not that.
I'm going to do my shiurim. I'll tell you the story.
How long would you?
How long? It'll take at least minimum of 10 minutes. No, take 10 minutes for sure. This story, first is the story of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. The famous story of Kol Yeled Bocher. The baby was crying, and the Mittler Rebbe was so fatong, they didn't hear, and the baby fell, and the Alter Rebbe picked her up and rocked her to sleep, and he left, and the Mittler Rebbe didn't notice anything. Later was upset, okay. This is a story about the Dan Motzach. If I came here for Hey Tavis, I'll tell the story. But since I'm not, I'll tell it here now. There was a tkufa, the Rebbe was afraid that they're going to steal further Sfarim. It was before they had the equal from the court, that you can't take any book. So they made a mishmoris, learning outside the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment the whole time. And this Bacha, his name is Moshe, now he's a younger man. His name is Moshe Meir Vogel, who lives in Pittsburgh. He was a Bacha, and he was learning. And this was like the summer of Mem Hay, probably. And he went to England for a simcha, and he came back. He had asthma, but he had a very bad cough. And he was sitting and learning with a chavrusa. When a horse, suddenly, the Yama Klein comes up. And he has a big jar of Schneesen's honey from Kfar Chabad. And he said, the Rebbe sent this up, and he says you should have this with tea. It's part one of the story. Part two is what happened on Hey Tavis itself. I knew, by the way, they knew that there's going to be the verdict then. Because I was leaving New York on Gimel Tavis, Sunday night. And Rabbi Krinsky's son told me, don't go, because tomorrow is going to be the Dan Motzach. I said, how do you know? So he said, because the judge left the whole file on this case, all the proofs and the deposition, everything was there in the court. Because he was very busy with a different major case. But now, before he went for Chorah in December home, he took home that file. So they understood he's going to work on that and come back with the thing. And he did, but the only thing is that someone took them a day to type it up until he gave it, whatever. So the pilot was B'yam HaShlishi, Shulchan Bakit, like it's Kessler. Now that day, Hey Tavis, this same Moshe Meir Vogel, was a shtickle korev of my marriage to Rabbi Yuval Krinsky. And he had it settled, or he had something he wanted to give in to the Rebbe, so he took it into Rabbi Krinsky next door. And Rabbi Krinsky was putting on his coat. It's 10:30 in the morning. He says, where are you going? He said, I'm going to the court. They phoned up that they have the verdict. So he said, who's in the car? Is there room for one more? And they took him. And he went. Yudel came out of the court, looked first page, and he looked to the back. He saw that, tucked in, and there was a cell phone in the car phone. The old cell phones today, they're little. This was like a big contraption. In the Rebbe's car, there was a phone. Because if he had to contact, when I went to Greenland, he called up to the mosquitoes in the middle, from the oil. So Yudel Krinsky calls up the office, and Rabbi Klein answers the phone. He says he wants the Rebbe to know as soon as possible. Tell the Rebbe that the Dalnotzach. And you got the thing. So Rabbi Klein goes in, and there's a rule with the mosquitoes that if they knock on the door to go in, but if there's another mosquito that's in there already, you can go in. You don't have to knock. And Rabbi Groner was in there, working, whatever, not talking to the Rebbe. So Rabbi Klein walked in, and the Rebbe was fatifed in learning, like the middle Rebbe, like the Alter Rebbe. And didn't notice, so he banged his steps, walking up to the Rebbe's desk. No notice. He shook around a little. What could he do? He was there about 5, maybe 7, 8 minutes. Now, what he didn't know is that Rabbi Krinsky, after he called up the mosquitoes, right after that he called up the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin told Chaim Baruch Halberstam. Chaim Baruch Halberstam brought a big loudspeaker and music, and suddenly Rabbi Klein is standing there waiting to tell the Rebbe, and with the mold, with the ganze Chasana outside. So the Rebbe looked up and he says, "What's geschehen?" So he said, Yudel called up, and he said, "Let the Dalnotzach came out the thing." So the Rebbe said, "Tell him when he comes here, he should bring it into me right away." And then they went back into his sefer. Back in there. So why did I tell you the story of the Alter Rebbe? The Rebbe was so, the Agmas Nefesh, the whole krenk that we felt that whole year and a half until the Damlot. They ever heard about it? It was immediately back in there. Let me know when he comes in. That doesn't have to waste the next minute. But when a bacha was coughing through the mahogany thick doors and upstairs, that's what I heard. And he said, "Give him money." I was in Pittsburgh. He was in Pittsburgh, Moshe Meir. It's Hakel. So it was last Sukkot, not this year. And he asked me to Fabrein. It's one of the days of Chalamoy. And I knew the story from him because they once brought me out there, hey Davis. And he told the story. And he had the honey on the table. It's about 35 years ago. So I told him, now this year, you get a little tiny drop you can get. Couldn't make a relation with Zucker. And I wanted to save a little bit for my family that was back in the house. There was 1/4 of a drop to everybody. It was like the Rebbe's matzah. I have a distinction, the Rebbe's matzah from years ago. When it comes to the Seder, we are more, we still find I'm a speck. Tiny crumb.
Do you still give out now?
What?
You still have now, like Rabbi's matzah?
You come to my Seder, we look, and some years, we just notice there's something there. Tiny crumb from one of the years.
keep the envelopes or the napkin or the plastic. You didn't notice it. Talking about a speck, tiny speck. But you know something? You have the Rebbe. That's Label Kaplan. You know Label Kaplan from Tzvaz.
Oh, Shalom.
Oh, Shalom. He was in my house. He visited London. I don't remember why. And I find him to come home. We was some event there.
gelebt in London einmal.
Crazy. And he came to my house.
Label.
Label, I remember some supper with him. He told me stories. He told me that when he went to Tzfaz, the Rebbe gave him a Tanya in Yechidus. A Spaka Tanya. And he came out, and the Tanya didn't look something modern about it. Didn't look like it's a new Tanya. So he opened it up, and he saw there's an inscription. Hakdoshim. Yom Gimel had a whole thing about the Sedra, the Sat Shalom Ba'aretz, things like this. These psukim, how much of psukim on B'chuk Koisai? And I think, if I remember correctly, it had Mem Shin on the bottom as well. So it looked like a Tanya, and it looked like it was a used Tanya. That's why he opened it up. So he told me Yom HaKlaim. So Yom HaKlaim said, I'll ask the Rebbe. And he took it back in, and he talked to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, Nicht das aber gemeint. And he gave him a different one. He gave it to him. So Rebbe Kaplan told me this story. I said, are you kidding me? I was going with sugar. So he said, I'll tell you a better story. The Rebbe gave him a pack of $100 bills. He took it. Maybe to himself, you know. He came out of Yechidus, and he saw it was $110 bills. He told me Yom, and Yom put it in, and he came out with $1 bill. I screamed at him. But to myself, I said, that's why. He was not looking for the struggle. He was looking for them. You know, you have to know what you're looking for. You know what you're looking for. And you got a letter from the Rebbe, and it was also one of the Mufsim out of the Yom Kippur War. They got a letter with those same psukim on it. And Mr. Kloli, just before Rosh Hashanah. What? I think it's just Tzfaz. You have to keep checking. It's Chelik Chavtas, I think, the Igris. I don't remember. But it had those basic. I said to him, Monoshach, if he's a Rebbe, he doesn't make a mistake. If he's not a Rebbe, what's he writing a Hagdosh, a Tanya to himself?
Eine von den guten Sachen von Gimmel von Hey Tavis, also ich bin fast, I mean, we had not low, I remember when it was, that was my fast, not, the Rebbe is gewollt reden mit den Lawyers. Du hast mal spielen, ja, aber mit dem gewollt reden.
Aber da haben sie getroffen mit sich.
Let them what?
Da haben sie getroffen mit sich.
Sie gewähnen mitten, ich bin ohne schöne Sachen. Du kann ich mal spielen. So getan, I talk for the case was supposed to start that he has to speak to the Rebbe. Doesn't have to go in Kazanik and Neinal Takna, that the Sharang. The Rebbe's Rosa coming. That had a greater problem.
Not Louis.
Not Louis. The Rebbe hat an Einreden von der ersten Tag nach Meister, der Rebbe Schwenne sieht der Reino. Sie hat mir dieselbe Sache.
What?
Der Zahle Scheni sagt dieselbe Sache. Also vierte Rebbe, das sieht der Reino, und nachdem ist es dann gar nicht. Und mit Meile, so sei Jerusche, mit Meile. Ich darf helfen von Rebbe. Und der Rebbe sagt, not who was my father, okay, spoke in English. I cannot in Yiddish auch. As a Mayuchas, as I get a Einikel. Sein Tat, Shemay Levine ist ein Affette. Das ist nicht von einer...
Ruin?
Not Lewin, yeah. It's not Lewin, his name is Levin. Lewin, it's not Lewin, it's Levin. Das wird beim Rebbe, beschaut der Rebbe, sagt der Rebbe, der Schwenne sieht der Reino. Wenn meint der Rebbe? Rebbe, I promise you, we're gonna win.
Yeah, what?
We're gonna win.
I'll tell you a story about the trial. The Rebbe called in Rabbi Yudel Krinsky and Rabbi Avraham Shem Tov to give them over to deal with it. So the Rebbe said, Be'emes, I should have called in Mendel Futterfaz and the Mayor Aft. But they, you know, you guys deal with the things, I called you in. Now, that was a derech agavdik word of the Rebbe. Within a month, Avraham Shem Tov's daughter, Esther Golden, was engaged to Meir Afton's son, Mori Afton, and Yudel Krinsky's daughter was engaged to Yossi Futterfaz, Mendel Futterfaz's Einikel. And I asked Beryl Futterfaz, with that shidduch, he said it was not even read when the Rebbe said that. It's not snapshot. Because the Rebbe, that derech agavdik word, a wertel.
Ich denke doch nicht Luin, wenn du gemacht die ganze sein Tevis, meine ganze Messiebe ist ja mit Sam. Die Lawyers und die Luin hat gerät. Was hat nicht Luin gesagt? Gesagt, da mal gerne Machlekes in Teire, in Chumash, was ist da früher? Ein Lawyer und ein Doktor haben sie gekriegt.
Was?
Ein Lawyer und ein Doktor haben sie gekriegt, wer ist früher in Teire? Doktor sagt, der Doktor ist früher, weil man gedacht, Tom Chabek macht eine Operation, bei Odom Richten. Der Doktor früher. Sagt der Lawyer, nein, der Lawyer ist früher. Steht da, oh, so ist es Seiva Voyer, sagt er. Wer macht Seiva Voyer, nicht Lawyer, sagt er.
He told us that.
Das ist doch von dem Elohim.
He was in London. Right after the Didan Mosach, and he was staying with. We went out with Peter Combs, and Peter asked, "Did you consult the Rebbe?" So he said they got messages, but one time they met the Rebbe. I think it was somewhere down here. And the Rebbe just told, he said, and what the Rebbe said, the Rebbe told him one point, which didn't look so special. But it turned out that was the entirety of Nusach, and that was the letter to Marx. So the Rebbe told him one thing, focus on the letter to Marx. That's what the Rebbe said.
Alexander Marx.
What?
Alexander Marx.
Yeah.
Rabbi, is the floor still
I'll
open?
tell you something else. A bacher went on Merkeshlichus. Saskatchewan, you ever hear of that? In this country. Saskatoon. And there, he was on Merkeshlichus in the summer. There was a woman there who was not really Jewish. Her grandmother was, her grandfather was.
grandfather was a Mashumit. And she was a cousin of Judge Tiffany. He had a relative Dalton. But, and she said, they were like liberal Jews, but she was very, very interested in Yiddishkeit, and her husband was Jewish, wasn't. But she said that the cousin, the judge, said that he was not B'deidan Maktav until he heard a statement of a remarkable woman, and that was the Rebbe. He said that to his relative. The words of the Rebbe. The Rebbe mentioned in the Sikha.
Yeah.
That was the deciding.
Die belangt zu belangt zu Chassidus.
The books belong to the Chassidim because my father belonged to it. Just like that, she said.
Yeah.
Kisler wird doch geben.